Chapter 671. Tan Xiu had seen Mu Weining's father, the talented and extraordinary Mu Jianhua. It was just that he couldn't figure out why Mu Weining would help him fill the hole. Could it be that his business failed? What happened? Asked Tan Xiu curiously. It's said that one shouldn't wash one's dirty linen in public. Mu Weining forced a smile and said, but you'll be the closest person to me in the future, so I don't want to hide it from you. My father's character is headstrong and self-opinionated, so he's not suitable for business. The family business he's in charge of is very small, but the two small companies he runs suffer a lot of losses every year. For the sake of face, he always asks me for money every year. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is, he has other women and children apart from my mother. Even though my half-brother and half-sister can't get the Mu family's approval. Tan Xiu suddenly understood. As the saying goes, even an upright official would find it difficult to settle family disputes. Since Mu Weining's mother, Jiang Zhenli, could endure it, he didn't want to express his opinion. After hesitating for a moment, he patted Mu Weining's hand and said, just tell me directly if you don't have enough money later. You're going to marry me in the future, so I can't just ignore you. Mu Weining smiled and said, that's enough for me to hear. I think it's better for women to be self-reliant. Besides, my business is doing well now and I can get a lot of profits every year. It's enough for me to use. Regardless of whether it's enough or not, just look for me first if you need it, said Tan Xiu. I have a lot of things to do recently, so I need a lot of money. But I can easily take out several billion yuan. Mu Weining let out a faint smile and suddenly asked, were you very poor when we first met in Tianjin City? I remember that you made money by selling calligraphy and paintings at that time. I was indeed very poor at that time. Tan Xiu said with a smile, the magnificent Tang Corp didn't make any profits and needed to invest a lot of money instead. I also needed to buy some cultivation resources at that time, so I needed to spend a lot of money. That's not right. Don't tell me you want to settle the account later. I remember that I made a lot of money from you. Pfft, Mu Weining covered her mouth and laughed. I don't dare to have any thoughts of settling accounts with you. You're a super rich man now, and I still need you to support me in the future. Grace Regale Advertising. Located in the bustling area of Hung District, it occupied an entire floor of an office building that was dozens of floors high. Although the company did not have many employees, only about 40 people, the decoration was extremely luxurious, and the style was unique. Tan Xiu, who was here for the first time, was amazed by the small designs in many places. Boss, you are here. Chairman Wei of Tongfu Jewelry is here again. He knew that you were coming today, so he also brought the friend surnamed Huang. The slim, bespectacled female secretary, who looked like a college student, looked at Tan Xiu curiously and said respectfully. At this moment, Mu Weining revealed the side of a strong woman. She took the documents handed over by the female secretary and asked, which guest room are they in? Number 2. The female secretary replied. Mu Weining nodded and said, tell manager Miao to greet them first. I'll be there later. Afterward, Mu Weining took Tan Xiu to her office. The office was nearly 100 square meters, and the decoration style was more fashionable and luxurious. Behind the half-moon-shaped desk was a row of bookcases against the wall, which was full of various books and materials. At the other end were 3 sofas, 2 big ones and a small one, with a tea table in the middle. The most important thing was that there were a lot of potted plants planted here. Even if it was just an office, it still gave people a feeling of vitality. The office is good. Tan Xiu praised. Mu Weining smiled and personally made a cup of tea for Tan Xiu. Then, she said, I'm going to see the client first. Follow me to the 18th floor. There's a client there, who's very annoying. Tan Xiu instantly realized that the annoying Mu Weining said should be her suitor. At this moment, he finally understood why Mu Weining asked him to come to the company with her. It was obvious that she wanted to announce to the other party that she was already taken. In the second reception room. After Mu Weining came in, she slightly furrowed her brows. It was because she found that apart from the old client, Director Wei, there was also Zhang Danyang from the 18th floor's Shun Door Industry. As of now, their Grace Regale Advertising Company had taken 40% of the advertising share of Shun Door Industry. Although it was not comparable to the advertising quota of Director Wei's company, it was still a big client. Hello, Director Wei. Chief Zhang. Mu Weining's furrowed brows only lasted for a moment before she smiled and greeted them. Wei Zongchao got up and smilingly said, Chief Mu, I really didn't expect this. My old friend's Shun Door Industry is unexpectedly cooperating with your company. I originally wanted to introduce him to you. I didn't expect that he would be captured by Chief Mu so early. Ha ha ha. Mu Weining's breath stagnated. She looked at Zhang Danyang, who stood up with a faint smile. She just glanced at him and then said with a smile, Director Wei, you must be joking. Chief Zhang's Shun Door Industry and our company are both in this building, so it's more convenient for us to cooperate. Anyhow, Director Wei, I heard a few days ago that the advertising plan we made for your company was rejected by you. Can you tell me the specific reason? The proposal that I'm optimistic about was personally customized by Chief Mu for our company, said Wei Zongchao with a smile. It wasn't made by the design department of your company. It can't be said that the plan is not without merit, but I always feel that something is missing. That's right, it was Chief Zhang who mentioned it to me. Only then did I realize it. Chief Zhang. The smile on Mu Weining's face instantly disappeared without a trace. She was smart and immediately realized that the reason why Wei Zongchao made things difficult for her company must be related to Zhang Danyang. Sure enough. We're old acquaintances, Weining. Zhang Danyang said with a smile, as a matter of fact, an advertising plan can be easily approved as long as it's not bad. However, Director Wei once owed me a big favor. He knew that I cooperated with your Grace Regale Advertising Company and that I adore you, so he asked him to help me. We've already agreed that as long as we become a family, all the advertisements of my Shun Door Industry and Director Wei's company will be given to you. Mu Weining's expression was a bit unsightly. She could hear a bit of threat in Zhang Danyang's words. After a moment of silence, she slowly said, Chief Zhang, we're doing business, so I hope you don't bring your personal feelings into it. Furthermore, I already told you that I have a boyfriend, so it's impossible between us. Weining, I have the right to pursue you as long as you're not married. Zhang Danyang shook his head and smilingly said. Furthermore, I'm sure you're also aware of our country's national conditions. It's a society of human relations, and doing business is also inseparable from human relations. Chief Zhang, you. Mu Weining angrily said. Zhang Danyang raised his hand to interrupt Mu Weining and smilingly said, I like you from the bottom of my heart, Weining. I even divorced the tigress at home and gave her my child for you. I'm really sincere, and I believe you can feel it. Besides, our businesses are tied together, so it can be said that we're closer than ever. You can rest assured that as long as you become my woman, I'll definitely use all my connections and resources to help your company get a lot of clients. Your divorce has nothing to do with me, and I won't accept you, said Mu Weining without hesitation. Furthermore, it's my own company, so I can get clients by myself. The smile on Zhang Danyang's face gradually disappeared and his tone became aggressive. You'll also refuse if Brother Wei and I terminate our cooperation with you? That's right, I have a very close relationship with your company's clients, Chief Wang of Zhongting Floor Tiles and Chief Hao of Janya Cabinet. Did you investigate my company? Mu Weining angrily said with a frosty face. No. I didn't specifically investigate your company. Zhang Danyang proudly smiled. It's mainly because I was chatting with Brother Wei, Chief Wang, and Chief Hao when we were having tea together and accidentally learned about it. Disgust was born inside Mu Weining's heart. She didn't expect that the usually polite and mature Zhang Danyang turned out to be such a despicable person. Her eyes then fell on Wei Zongchao and asked, Director Wei, we've cooperated on several projects before, and I believe you've also felt the sincerity and strength of our Grace Regale advertising. We're about to reach a cooperation intention for the new project, and we're just short of signing the final agreement. Will you really give up your company's interest for an outsider? Wei Zongchao licked his lips and said with a smile, Why wouldn't I do it if I can give up this small profit and get more benefits? You, Mu Weining was furious. Clap, 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 the door of the number 2 reception room was pushed open and the sound of applause came from the outside. Tan Xiu looked at the shameless faces of Wei Zongchao and Zhang Danyang and sneered inwardly. He had planned to wait for Mu Weining to come back in her office, but thinking of Mu Weining's demure personality, he wanted to come and listen to how Mu Weining dealt with business. Who would have thought that he would hear such a wonderful threat? Tan Xiu, upon seeing Tan Xiu, the anger in Mu Weining's heart weakened a bit. Ignoring Mu Weining, Tan Xiu walked to the sofa opposite Wei Zongchao and Zhang Danyang and sat down. As he crossed his legs, he took out a cigarette and lit it up. After taking a few deep puffs, he said with a smile, 2 gentlemen, aren't you a bit too much to bully my fiancé? Also, I just heard the first sentence. You can pursue me without getting married? Aren't you trying to poach my woman openly and above board? Zhang Danyang looked vigilant and coldly stared at Tan Xiu, asking, Who are you? Who I am is not something that you small fries can understand, said Tan Xiu with a smile. If you don't want to do business with my Weining, then let's part ways. To be honest, I've already begun to worry about my Weining having clients like you. Chapter 672. Zhang Danyang didn't expect that Mu Weining's boyfriend would come to the company. He didn't expect that this brat would be so insolent. Jealousy grew in his heart as he angrily shouted, I don't care who you are. This is a company talk. Get the hell out of here. Else you'll have to suffer. Tan Xiu sneered, This is my family's company. Shouldn't you be the one to get the hell out of here? Besides, don't talk to me with your hypocritical attitude. I've seen a lot of people who abuse their power for personal gain, but I've never seen someone as shameless as you. Do you think you're the only one who has connections? Our family doesn't. Wei Zongchao also looked a bit angry at the moment. However, he was cautious by nature and faintly felt that Tan Xiu looked familiar, so he didn't flare up. However, Tan Xiu was so young, yet he dared to be so insolent. He was still very dissatisfied and said, Young man, you look familiar to me. May I know what kind of powerful background you have? Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, I thought I was quite popular, but I didn't expect that you didn't know me. Now I'm relieved. Zhang Danyang suddenly stood up and coldly shouted, Your surname is Tang, isn't it? You're so arrogant and domineering at such a young age. Didn't you just say that you also have connections? Why don't you show us your connections? Why should I show you? Tan Xiu asked back. Who do you think you are? Zhang Danyang coldly snorted and said, You're just a pretentious trash. How dare you talk so arrogantly in front of us? Someone like you doesn't have any connections at all. Weining, I believe you've also seen it. This stupid guy is not worthy of you at all. I have 10,000 ways to play him to death if I want to. Mu Weining opened her mouth, only to find that Tan Xiu waved his hand at her. She also noticed that Tan Xiu's expression was a bit cold. He was obviously angered by Zhang Danyang. Suddenly, she somewhat pitied Zhang Danyang. This shameless guy could provoke anyone, but he had to provoke Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and took out his cell phone while smoking. He stood up to disrupt the situation because he knew that Mu Weining might lose these 2 clients because of him. Therefore, before he entered the door, he had already decided that no matter what the final outcome was, he would help Mu Weining pull in some business. Connections. He had no shortage of them. He quickly browsed through Weibo and asked for the name of Wei Zongchao's company, as well as their names. In the end, he marked all his friends who were doing business with him and sent a short message. My girlfriend was bullied by Zhang Danyang, the CEO of Shanghai's Shun Door Industry, and Wei Zongqiao, the CEO of Tongfu Jewelry. If you know them, quickly cut ties with them. Their characters are too bad. Also, advertise for my girlfriend's advertising company. If there's a need, please contact them, Shanghai's Charm Regale Advertising. After Tan Xiu pressed the send button, he looked up at Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongqiao, whose faces were filled with contempt. Zhang Danyang sneered and said, "Brat, you want to show us your connections? Ha ha ha. What a joke. Do you think you can help the Grace Regale Advertising Company pull business? Who would have thought that? Acting like a pretentious prick like you." Wei Zongqiao's face was also full of disdain as he disdainfully said, "You don't even dare to say your own identity. What kind of means do you have? I was about to leave, but now I've dispelled that idea. I'd like to see how much weight you have." Tan Xiu didn't have the confidence to deal with Shun Door Industry and Tongfu Jewelry when he sent the short message. But he was confident that he could help Mu Weining pull some business. After pondering for a moment, Tan Xiu slowly stretched out 3 fingers and said indifferently, 30 minutes. If I don't help the Grace Regale Advertising Company pull business within 30 minutes, I'm willing to lose 100,000. 200,000 yuan to you. If I help the Grace Regale Advertising Company pull business within 30 minutes, do you dare to lose 100,000 yuan to me each, 200,000 yuan? Just this little bet. Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongqiao looked at each other with disdain on their faces. Both of them were billionaires, and 200,000 might just be the price of a meal they had at a wine bar. Even when they gathered with their friends to play cards, they would sometimes lose several times more than this, no? Wei Zongqiao was still a bit worried at first, but he was completely relieved after hearing the bet proposed by Tan Xiu. Bullying the small fries was what he liked the most, so he grabbed the sofa armrest and laughed aloud, "You're too stingy, little brother. What can we do with 200,000 yuan? Is it even enough to fill the gap between our teeth? Let's play big. 2 million, how about it?" Zhang Danyang also grinned and said, "Yeah. We'll give you 2 million each if you win, and you only need to give us 1 million each if we lose. Is it a good deal?" A hint of hesitation appeared on Tan Xiu's face as he turned to look at Mu Weining. He seemed to have made up his mind and loudly said, "Why should I be afraid of you if you want to gamble? 20 million. If you win, I'll give you 20 million. Pft, cough, cough. Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongqiao were choked by Tan Xiu's words. They had never seen such a pretentious prick before. 20 million. How could this prick have 20 million? It must be noted that 20 million was already a huge amount for them. Zhang Danyang grinned and said, 20 million. Zhang Danyang grinned and said, "It's just a trifling matter for us. But don't just brag, little brother. It's not like I'm looking down on you from the crack of the door, but it would be strange if you can take out 20 million. Tan Xiu opened his mouth and suddenly turned to look at Mu Weining, asking, "Weining, tell me, how much is your advertising company worth? Is it worth 20 million? At first, Mu Weining was stunned when she heard that Tan Xiu wanted to gamble with the other party. But gradually, she understood that Tan Xiu was pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger. He wanted to rip off these two guys. Smart as she was, she quickly pretended to be nervous in order to cooperate with Tan Xiu and said, "Don't be stupid, Tan Xiu. Gambling is very annoying, so don't gamble with them. Besides, they are rich people. We can't afford to play with them." Seeing Mu Weining's cooperation, Tan Xiu was secretly happy inwardly. But he still pretended to be angry out of shame and angrily shouted, "Who said we can't afford to play? Can't your advertising company make a lot of money? If you still care about me, then let me gamble with them. If you don't, let's." Mu Weining hurriedly pulled Tan Xiu's sleeve and begged, "Please listen to me, Tan Xiu. This is not something we don't care about. We have to live in the future and rely on this advertising company to make money. If you lose, we. Tan Xiao was like a gambler who lost and his eyes turned red. He fiercely jumped up and shouted, "Who said I'll lose? I'm confident that I can beat them. Don't you believe that I have a strong network?" Mu Weining seemed to be irritated by Tan Xiao and shouted, "Gamble, gamble, gamble. You only know how to gamble. Don't you think about the future? Since you want to gamble, you can take the company." After saying that, she directly sat on the sofa next to Tan Xiao, lowering her head and sulking. Tan Xiao fiercely glared at Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao and shouted, 20 million. I'll use the company to gamble. If we lose, we'll sell the company to compensate you. What about you? Are you still willing to lose 20 million each? Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao's complexion slightly changed. Never in their dreams did they expect that Mu Weining, who was usually very rational, would be willing to use the company to gamble with Tan Xiao. This kind of gamble was not a trivial matter for them. It would be fine if they won, as they could make a lot of money. But if they lost, it would be very painful for them. Even the company's operation would be affected. Wei Zongchao looked at Tan Xiao and then at Mu Weining. Suddenly, he said in a deep voice, "We can gamble. But let's have an agreement first. Since you said that you have a strong network, you must have a clear definition of the amount of projects you can pull. Else, if you pull a 1 yuan project, we'll lose 20 million to you." Amount? Tan Xiao stared blankly for a moment. He hesitated and then said, "How about a 100,000 yuan project?" Zhang Danyang snorted and snorted, "A 100,000 yuan project? 20 million yuan bet? Are you kidding me? Let me tell you something. Since you dare to gamble, you must pull more projects with more funds. Just imagine. A 20 million bet, you must at least pull a 10 million yuan project, right?" Mu Weining, who was sitting next to Tan Xiao, suddenly raised her head and angrily shouted, "Don't go too far. A 10 million yuan advertising project? The project you'll give me is less than 10 million yuan, no?" Tan Xiao suddenly turned his head to look at Mu Weining and shouted, "Shut up. 10 million yuan it is. How can I let them look down on me? If I don't get 10 million yuan of advertising projects within half an hour, I'll lose." Tan Xiao, Mu Weining was very anxious. Tan Xiao ignored her and stared at Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao, shouting, "What about you? Don't put on airs in front of me if you don't have 20 million yuan." Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao were completely relieved at this time. They didn't believe that Tan Xiao could pull a 10 million yuan advertising project for the Grace Regale advertising. This brat exuded a sense of pettiness inside and out, so he should also be a poor person. It was very likely that he and Mu Weining were together because of her beauty, and on the other hand, he wanted to be her gigolo. What a pity. Mu Weining was a proud daughter of heaven, yet she would turn into an idiot when it came to matters of the heart. 10 minutes later, Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao contacted each other by phone. They took out their bank cards and put them on the table. They also showed the text messages on their mobile phones to prove that 20 million yuan had been transferred to their bank cards. Everything was settled. A smile appeared on Tan Xiao's face. He took out his cell phone that he had quietly turned off. After rebooting it, he heard the text messages that kept ringing. Tan Xiao opened it and immediately looked up at Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao. He then said in a deep voice, "Weining, tell me about the financial situation of your Grace Regale advertising now." "We have about 12 million yuan of liquid funds now," said Mu Weining. "In addition, more than 40 million yuan has been invested in the project." Chapter 673. After a brief introduction of the open and transparent company accounts to Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao, Mu Weining's previous worry and anger disappeared. She sat next to Tan Xiao and looked at the two men with pity and sympathy in her eyes. At the same time, she was also faintly excited. Although this was a bet, the benefits that could be obtained in the end would really belong to her company. She didn't know how many connections Tan Xiu had, but she trusted Tan Xiu from the bottom of her heart. Ring, 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 the ringtone officially rang for the first time after Tan Xiu rebooted his phone. Tan Xiu looked at the name on the caller ID. What he didn't expect was that the caller turned out to be Chu Yuan. Tan Xiu hesitated for a moment before he answered the call and said with a smile, "Mr. Chu." Chu Yuan's voice came from the phone. "Tan Xiu, I just inquired about it. The two companies you mentioned in the text message do exist in Shanghai. I don't have much interaction with them, so it's not convenient for me to do anything. However, my company's product promotion is about to cooperate with an advertising company. The fax information has been sent. Once the Grace Regale Advertising receives it and is willing to do the planning, packaging, and publicity for my company, I'll immediately notify the finance department to send a 30% deposit of the total investment in advertising." Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and said, "All right, I got it. Chu Yuan, if you have time in the near future, come out and have a drink. I haven't seen that little thing yet. Let's study it together next time." "All right." Chu Yuan said, "There's one more thing. I'm no longer the young lord of the Imperial Garden. Although I haven't completely separated from the Imperial Garden, I'm only the Imperial Garden's foreign affairs elder now. All the businesses of the Imperial Garden that I controlled have also been taken back. Apart from having two companies of my own now, I won't invest too much in advertising." "I got it," Tan Xiu calmly said. He didn't particularly understand why Chu Yuan separated from the Imperial Garden and gave up such a high status. After all, with Chu Yuan's status, he could use the Imperial Garden's channels to obtain a lot of benefits, which would be of great help to his future development. However, what others thought had nothing to do with him. This time, Chu Yuan was the first to express goodwill. He only needed to remember this favor. Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongqiao looked at each other. The call Tan Xiu received made them a little curious, but most of their emotions were contempt. In their opinion, it was just a bluff. Bang bang, someone knocked on the door of reception room number 2. The general manager's secretary hurriedly opened the door and came to Mu Weining with 2 faxes. She excitedly said, "Boss, these are the faxes our business department just received. New Idea Training and Imperial Fortune Venture Capital are going to hand over all the advertisements for this year to our company. New Thought Training Company. Royal Gambling Venture Capital Company." Mu Weining was stunned. She read the 2 faxes carefully, and a strange look appeared in her eyes. While handing it to Tan Xiu, she looked at Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongqiao with pity in her eyes. Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongqiao were stunned. They had been running businesses in Shanghai for many years, so they had some understanding of New Idea Training Company and Yuba Venture Capital. Both of those companies were doing just as well as they did. "Let me see." Zhang Danyang suddenly got up and rushed to Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu just glanced at it and handed it to Zhang Danyang with a smile. Half a minute later, Zhang Danyang's expression became extremely ugly, and there was even a flicker of anger in his eyes. He knew who had given these 2 letters of intent to the Grace Regale Advertising. Chu Yuan, the evildoer in Shanghai's business circle, controlled far more than these 2 companies at the same time. "You know Chu Yuan?" Zhang Danyang looked at Tan Xiu in disbelief and asked. Tan Xiu shrugged his shoulders and said with a faint smile, "Yes, I do." Ring, 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 Tan Xiu's cell phone rang again. When he looked at the number displayed on the screen, a smile suddenly appeared on the corner of his mouth. After picking it up, he directly turned on the loudspeaker and said, "Brother Zhang, did you see my text message?" "I saw that message, Brother Tang." "I've never heard of Zhang Danyang, the shunned door industry's CEO. He should be a nobody. I know Wei Zongqiao of Blessed Fortune Jewelry, but he's not a big shot either. Those 2 bastards dared to provoke my sister-in-law. They're really arrogant and despotic. How about this? I'll give the Xinjiang Group's advertising contracts for the next 3 years to my sister-in-law's Grace Regale Advertising. The advertising fees for the next 3 years will be transferred to her in a lump sum later. Brother Tang, if you don't have time, just leave those 2 guys to me. I'll make them disappear from Shanghai's business circle in a week at most. Zhang Yueming's voice came out of the phone. With a faint smile, Tan Xiu glanced at Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao, whose faces were filled with shock and disbelief, and then said with a smile, Brother Zhang, I don't need to trouble you to deal with those 2 guys. As for the advertising cooperation, thank you very much. I'll treat you to a drink some other day. Alright, I'll treat you when the time comes. Consider it as an apology for my son, Brother Tang. No problem. After hanging up the phone, Tan Xiu was about to speak when his cell phone rang again. Hello, Brother Gu. What's the situation, Brother Tang? Where did those 2 bastards jump out from? How dare they even dare to provoke you? Do you want me to use some of my connections to deal with them? Thank you for your good intentions, Brother Gu. I'll deal with this matter. Since you don't need my intervention, then forget it, Brother Tang. My Dingshan Media also has an advertising business. Since my sister-in-law has opened an advertising company, I think we can cooperate with her. The Grace Regale Advertising only needs to pay 1 yuan a year, and I'll give you some important channels of Dingshan Media's advertising business. No need, Brother Gu. You don't need to give it to me for free. It's alright. The relationship between us brothers is much stronger than money. Alright, I won't bother you anymore. Come to my Dingshan Media if you have time. I have some good tea here. Alright. At this moment, Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao looked horrified. The dignified Dingshan Media's big boss, Zhang Yueming, unexpectedly had such a deep friendship with this guy in front of them. Suddenly, the 2 of them realized that they seemed to have fallen into a trap that Tan Xiu had specially dug for them. The thought made their bodies turn cold, as though their hearts had fallen into an ice hole. Ring, ring, ring. Just as Tan Xiu picked up the phone and turned on the loudspeaker, Jin Xinkui's angry voice came out of the phone, Brother Tang, did those 2 guys provoke my sister-in-law? I, Jin Xinkui, will kill them. It's nothing. They're just 2 small fries, I can deal with them, said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. I just learned that my sister-in-law has set up an advertising company. So, all the advertising of my Jinda real estate will be handed over to the Grace Regale Advertising, as well as the new projects we'll cooperate on. In short, Brother Tang, we're the closest people. You can directly tell me if there's anything you need. I, Jin Xinkui, will do it for you even if I have to risk everything. Alright, I'll keep it in mind, said Tan Xiu with a smile. Jin Xinkui didn't hang up the phone, but spoke again, I know Zhang Danyang of Shun Door Industry. I've had some business dealings with his company. Recently, I've just released a few real estate projects, and one of them is a fine renovation project. I'll interrupt them later and terminate the cooperation. Also, I'll spread the news in the construction company circle in Shanghai. Whoever dares to cooperate with his Shun Door Industry in the future will be going against me, Jin Xinkui. Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, Alright, do as you see fit. Let's meet up some other day and have a drink together. Alright. After hanging up the phone, Tan Xiu found that Zhang Danyang's body was shivering as he slumped down on the sofa. His complexion was extremely pale, and his face was full of panic. Wei Zongchao, on the other hand, looked at him with a bit of nervousness. He occasionally glanced at Zhang Danyang with a sympathetic expression. Ring, 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 the phone rang again. In the next half an hour, Tan Xiu had received dozens of calls, and the owner of each call expressed 2 attitudes. One was to deal with Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao, and the other was to hand over their company's advertisement to the Grace Regale Advertising. As for the first one, Tan Xiu directly refused. Dealing with Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongchao was a trivial matter, and he didn't need others to do it for him. Instead, Tan Xiu agreed to hand over the company's advertisement to the Grace Regale Advertising. More than half an hour passed. Zhang Danyang and Wei Zongqiao were simply sitting on pins and needles. At this moment, even if they were fools, they could realize that they had provoked trouble. The guy in front of them was not only a nobody who liked to brag, but also had a terrifying network of contacts. Even his identity was not simple. What made them speechless was that in just half an hour, the Grace Regale Advertising's business department had received dozens of faxed agreements, and the finance department had received more than 200 million yuan as deposit. More than 200 million yuan. The total assets of Zhang Danyang's company were less than 200 million yuan. The total assets of Wei Zongqiao's company were more than that, but he was not the only shareholder. Even if he added up all his assets, it would not exceed 150 million yuan. Tan Xiu put down his mobile, looked at the two men and casually said, "You've lost, so the money in these two bank cards should be mine, right?" Zhang Danyang's face was sullen and his tone was a bit begging as he said, "Mr. Tang, I looked down on you before. Please be magnanimous and don't stoop to my level. The 20 million yuan is yours. The password is 123456. Please keep it. As for business matters, please be magnanimous and let me off this time. I promise I'll immediately move my company out of this building and never see Boss Mu again for the rest of my life." Wei Zongqiao somewhat sympathized with Zhang Danyang. He was glad that although the head office of his Tongfu Jewelry was in Shanghai, there were many branches all over the country, especially in Hong Kong, which accounted for half of his business share. So, his foundation would not be shaken. But Zhang Danyang was different. His business was mainly in Shanghai. Although he would also sell to the surrounding cities, the quantity was pitiful. If Tan Xiu really hardened his heart to deal with Zhang Danyang, he would probably be finished. Chapter 674. Although Wei Zongqiao lost 20 million yuan and was shocked by Tan Xiu's terrifying connections, he wasn't too worried about it. He felt that it wouldn't take long for him to become a laughing stock in the business circle if he were to leave with his tail between his legs, so he slowly said, "I'm willing to accept the loss. Since I'm willing to bet, I'm willing to accept my loss. Everyone loves beauty, and Chief Shang also likes Chief Mu, so he's desperate to pursue her. Mr. Tang, you're a magnanimous person, so please don't stoop to our level and give him a way out." Tan Xiu slightly furrowed his brows while looking at Wei Zongqiao's slightly relaxed expression. After thinking for a while, he took out his mobile phone and dialed Hao Lei's number. After hearing Hao Lei's respectful voice, Tan Xiu directly asked, "How much do you know about Grand Fortune Jewelry?" "Boss, Grand Fortune Jewelry is a small jewelry company that relies on our Grand Fortune Jewelry to survive. 20% of its shares belong to our Everlasting Feast Hall. Additionally, the source of the goods is obtained through our Grand Fortune Jewelry's channels. The company's headquarters is in Shanghai, and its general manager is Wei Zongqiao, who owns 55% of the company's shares." Hao Lei told him everything she knew. A strange expression appeared on Tan Xiu's face as he looked at Wei Zongqiao, whose expression turned vigilant. Then, he slowly said, "I want to see Grand Fortune Jewelry go bankrupt. I want Wei Zongqiao to lose everything. I'll leave this matter to you. I need to get the result within a week at the earliest." "Understood," replied Tang Xiu respectfully. After hanging up, Tan Xiu put away his mobile phone and sneered, "You have the chance to plead for others, so you better pray for your own fortune. I guarantee you'll regret what you did today within a week." Wei Zongqiao suddenly got up and stared at Tan Xiu, asking, "Who did you call?" "It's an employee of mine." "I think you know her name," said Tan Xiu lightly. "She's Hao Lei, the person in charge of Grand Fortune Jewelry." Wei Zongqiao's body trembled and his legs went soft. He directly slumped on the sofa and roared in disbelief, "That's impossible. How could you know Chief Hao Lei? You are talking nonsense. The Grand Fortune Jewelry is very powerful in Hong Kong. Even if you have powerful connections in the mainland, you can't influence Hong Kong. After saying that, he seemed to realize something. He quickly grabbed his mobile phone and dialed Hao Lei's number. After the call was connected, he squeezed out a smile and said in a very respectful tone, "Hello, Chief Hao. I'm Wei Zongchao from Tongfu Jewelry. I haven't seen you for a while. My wife recently got a set of top-notch perfume from France. When do you have time? I'll personally take it to Hong Kong to visit you." Hao Li's cold voice came out of the phone. "Wei Zongchao, I don't know how you offended our boss, but if you know what's good for you, transfer all the shares of Tongfu Jewelry to Grand Fortune Jewelry. Otherwise, I don't mind using some tricks. Not only will I make you lose everything, but I will also make you work to death in the mines in Africa." "What?" Teacher and student Wei Zongchao exclaimed. In an instant, the phone in his hand fell to the ground, and he slumped onto the sofa with an ashen face. It was as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out at this moment. Hao Lei's words were like a thunderclap that exploded in his heart, shocking him to the point that he was dizzy and out of his wits. Time passed. Time passed bit by bit in the strange atmosphere. Wei Zongchao sobered up from his daze and looked up at Tan Xiu with difficulty. Under the watchful eyes of Mu Weining and Zhang Danyang, he swayed and knelt in front of Tan Xiu. With a begging and trembling voice, he said, "I know I'm courting death, Mr. Tang. But please forgive me this time for the sake of the elderly and children. I have a total of 55% shares of Tongfu Jewelry. I'm willing to transfer 40% to Grand Fortune Jewelry, while the remaining 15% will be used to support the elderly and children. Is that okay?" "Well, I should be ruthless to you," said Tan Xiu calmly. "But since you didn't do anything too excessive, then so be it. However, you don't have to keep the 15% shares. Just exchange it for cash and find a place to retire." Yes. "Thank you, Mr. Tang." Wei Zongchao wiped the sweat on his face and stood up while trembling with fear. He didn't look at Zhang Danyang again and left in a daze. Zhang Danyang noticed that Tan Xiu was looking at him, and his heart suddenly tightened. He didn't kneel, but his posture was extremely low as he begged, "Mr. Tang, I'm willing to take out another 20 million yuan to compensate you for the time delay. My company has been operating for decades, and it's not easy for me to reach its current scale. I beg you to be magnanimous and let me off this time. I promise that I'll hide far away from you and never appear in front of you again." Tang Xiu raised his brows and looked at Mu Weining, who had a tranquil expression on her face. He waved at her and got up to walk toward the door. His voice floated in the room, "I'll give you 3 days to fulfill your promise. I'm sure it'll be very difficult for you to establish a foothold in Shanghai after today's incident. Think about it carefully. Leave Shanghai and do business elsewhere." At the general manager's office. After entering the room, Mu Weining closed the door and directly locked it. She almost didn't stop and dashed toward Tan Xiu. Under Tan Xiu's confused eyes, she directly hugged Tan Xiu. "Thank you." Mu Weining said this from the bottom of her heart. Today, she was secretly glad that Tan Xiu came to the company with her. She was even more touched by what Tan Xiu had done for her. Otherwise, not only would she have a bellyful of anger when facing those two despicable and shameless villains, she would also lose some business. It was a blessing in disguise. This sentence was very suitable to describe her. It was also because of today's incident that the arrogant Mu Weining realized how important it was to have a man who could shelter her from the wind and rain and give her a safe and happy harbor. Tan Xiu patted her back and lightly smiled, "There's no need to be so polite between us. Now that the trouble has been solved, your business will become more and more prosperous in the future. I'm afraid that you'll have more things to do. It won't affect your studies, will it?" Mu Weining released Tan Xiu and shook her head, "It won't affect me. Postgraduate studies are very easy, and I've already learned everything I need to learn. In fact, I don't need to stay in school for half a year after the new year. I just need to review regularly and finish my final graduation thesis. After saying that, she seemed to recall something and quickly asked, you found so many people today, won't it affect you? If there's any impact, I can return all the deposits, Tan Xiu raised his hand to interrupt her and smilingly said, don't worry. It won't affect me. Today, I showed mercy to those two fellows because they reminded me of something. Since I have connections in my hands, it'll be a waste if I don't use it. In any case, they need to find an advertising company to cooperate with. Since we can earn money, there's no reason not to earn it. A happy smile appeared on the corner of Mu Weiniang's mouth. Tan Xiu's use of "we" was like pouring honey water into her heart, making her feel sweet. At noon, Tan Xiu stayed in the Grace Regale Advertising Company to have a working lunch with Mu Weiniang before he left alone. He had pulled a lot of business for Mu Weiniang, so she would probably be very busy in the coming days. On the way back to Blue Star Villa Complex, Tan Xiu recalled that Ouyang Lulu should still be sleeping soundly at home. After hesitating for a while, he decided to go to the nearby shopping mall to buy a new set of clothes for her. After all, he was so ruthless last night that he directly tore and stripped her clothes. However, buying clothes for a woman alone, especially underwear, made him a rookie without any experience to be at a loss. After thinking for a few seconds, he thought of a person, Yu Kai. Yu Kai had a strong potential to be a playboy, and his nature was very showy. Tan Xiu heard that he had 7 or 8 girlfriends during his half a year studying at Shanghai University. His speed of changing girlfriends was faster than changing new clothes. Therefore, he should be very good at buying clothes for women. Golden Eagle Shopping Mall. In a high-end shopping mall in Shanghai, there were rows upon rows of shops with a dazzling lineup of goods. Yu Kai was holding a handbag under his armpit while biting a toothpick in the corner of his mouth. Dressed up handsomely, he accompanied his new girlfriend who had just been with him for more than 10 days to stroll around. Honey, I want a Hermes bag. A slender and beautiful girl intimately pulled Yu Kai's arm and acted like a spoiled child. Her pair of bright eyes constantly swept over the high-end shops in the surroundings. Hermes? Yu Kai's heart trembled. Although his family was rich and his mother secretly gave him some money every 3 to 5 days, his monthly pocket money was only about 20,000 yuan. He was also someone who spent money like water. After the new year, he received 20,000 yuan as his living expenses, but now he only had 8,000 yuan left. However, he still had a credit card with a limit of more than 100,000 yuan. But that credit card belonged to his real estate, so he didn't want to use it unless he encountered a last resort. He wanted to refuse his new girlfriend's request, but he couldn't bear to refuse after looking at her beautiful appearance and her sweet and charming voice. After hesitating for a while, he finally nodded and said, "Since you want it, then I'll buy it for you." "Honey, you're so handsome." The girl was pleasantly surprised and stood on her tiptoes as she kissed Yu Kai's face. "Of course. Even those Korean stars don't have the qualifications to carry my shoes," said Yu Kai with a mischievous smile. "If I hadn't booked a room at the Shangri-La Hotel tonight, I would have directly taken you to Jingmen Island to drive a yacht there." The girl's eyes turned brighter, but she pretended to be shy and turned her head, saying, "I want to go to Jingmen Island to take a yacht." "I also want to," Yu Kai regretfully said. "Unfortunately, the time is too short. Wait for my school vacation. I'll definitely take you to Jingmen Island to enjoy it." Ring, 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 his cell phone rang at this moment. Chapter 675. Once upon a time. Xia Xiaotong was fortunate enough to be invited to a party organized by a rich young master in Shanghai. She served this young master Wu wholeheartedly that night. Not only did she win his favor, but she also received tens of thousands of yuan as a reward. Later on, she was even called by this young master Wu to serve her from time to time. However, looking at the furious Yu Kai at this moment, she knew that she had stirred up some trouble. Although Yu Kai was only a freshman at Shanghai University, he was very extravagant, and his family probably had a certain amount of wealth. Yu Kai's furious eyes instantly fell on Wu Guangjuan's face as he sternly shouted, "Let go of me." Wu Guangjuan raised his brows. Not only did he not let go of Xia Xiaotong, but he also lowered his head and kissed her face. He then glanced at Yu Kai provocatively and casually said, "Who the hell do you think you are? Xiaotong darling, where the hell did this guy come from? Do you know him?" Xia Xiaotong more or less knew Wu Guangjuan's character. He was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance and was famous for being narrow-minded in the circle. If she made him lose face today, she was afraid that she would end up miserable. After hesitating for a moment, she weighed the importance of Yu Kai and Wu Guangjuan in her heart. Then, the balance immediately fell on Wu Guangjuan's side. When she raised her beautiful face, she shook her head and said, "I don't know him, young Master Wu." Wu Guangjuan nodded with satisfaction. He raised his chin at Yu Kai a few times and sneered, "Did you hear that, brat? My Xiaotong darling doesn't know you, yet you're impatiently looking for trouble, aren't you?" Yu Kai looked at Xia Xiaotong in disbelief. He had already planned to hit her, but Xia Xiaotong's words were like a fierce slap that heavily slapped his face, causing his face to burn with pain. "She doesn't know me. This bitch who slept with me a few days ago now says that she doesn't know me in order to flatter another man." Yu Kai took a deep breath and suppressed the anger inside. He pointed at Wu Guangjuan and gave him a "you have guts" look before turning around and walking outside. When his footsteps were about to reach the store's entrance, he suddenly thought of something and returned to the cashier's counter. He grabbed the 30,000 yuan and threw it to the elegant and graceful cashier behind the counter, saying in a deep voice, "I, Yu Kai, have money, but I won't spend it on a bitch. You're not bad. At least you're making a living with your own abilities. I'll pay for it. You can pick a bag and buy it. Consider it my gift to you." Finished. He walked out of the shop without looking back. The dignified and beautiful cashier at the cashier counter held the 30,000 yuan that Yu Kai had tossed to her. She looked at Xia Xiaotong, who was not far away, and then looked at Yu Kai's back. She felt some sympathy for Yu Kai. However, she still turned around and whispered a few words to the female colleague next to her. Then, she ran outside. At the entrance of the shop, Tan Xiu had already heard Yu Kai's roar, but he did not go in. Although he didn't know what happened inside, he couldn't be bothered to care about the relationship between Yu Kai and his girlfriend. "Are you all right?" asked Tan Xiu casually as he saw Yu Kai coming out with a gloomy face. Yu Kai fiercely spat to the side. He shook his head and sneered, "I'm fine. Just consider it as playing with a bitch for a few days. I'll go home and wash my body." Tan Xiu sighed inwardly. He then nodded and said, "Let's go since you're all right." "Wait." The female cashier chased after him with 30,000 yuan in her hand. She quickly blocked in front of Yu Kai and quickly said, "Hello, sir. This is your money. I can't accept it." "Interesting. That's really fucking interesting. A nobody is always a nobody. You can't even give out money." Wu Guanghui came out with his arms around the two women's shoulders. He was very angry when he heard Yu Kai calling Xia Xiaotong a bitch and wanted to humiliate Yu Kai. He didn't expect that this female cashier would help him find an ironic topic. Yu Kai's expression instantly turned extremely unsightly. The female cashier had just witnessed the whole process and knew that this young Master Wu was not a good person. She also heard him use her to ridicule Yu Kai. She already had some sympathy for Yu Kai, so she quickly said, "It's not like that. Our store has a rule that we're not allowed to receive tips and benefits from the guests." Wu Guanghui furrowed his brows and looked unhappy. He then shouted in a deep voice, "Shut up." Standing at the side, Tan Xiu glanced at the frightened female cashier and the unsightly Yu Kai. He secretly sighed inwardly and then said to Wu Guanghui, "Brother, let people off when possible. You've already gained the upper hand, so let's call it a day." It's just a woman, especially one that you casually play with. There's no need to make enemies for such a trivial matter. Wu Guanghui proudly smiled and glanced at Tan Xiu before his eyes fell on Yukai's unsightly face again. On the contrary, Xie Xiaotong couldn't help but curse after hearing Tan Xiu's ugly words. Who the hell do you think you are? What does this have to do with you? You're really worrying about nothing. Also, I warn you, watch your words. What do you mean by casually playing with a woman? You're such a bastard. The other woman also twisted her enchanting slender waist and grumbled with dissatisfaction. I say, how can you be so wicked with your mouth? Look at your poor and shabby appearance. You're just a third wheel, aren't you? Humph, someone like you can't even play with them even if you want to. Wu Guanghui was overjoyed. He kissed Xie Xiaotong and the other woman's faces and praised, my two little darlings, you're really good at talking. This young master is in a good mood today. Very good indeed. I'll treat you well tonight. Tan Xiu shot a disgusted look at the trio. Then, he looked at the female cashier and lightly said, my brother gave it to you, so just take it. You're not in the store now, so you can't control the rules of your store. Having said that, he patted Yukai's shoulder and shook his head, let's go. A mad dog bit you, so you can't bite it back to retaliate, can you? Go back and take a bath to wash away the bad luck on your body. Yukai nodded. Although the female cashier wanted to return the money to him, giving Wu Guanghui an excuse to ridicule him, he was not annoyed by her. On the contrary, he somewhat admired her. After all, 30,000 yuan was probably equivalent to 1 or 2 months' salary for this female cashier. Bah! Wu Guanghui rolled his eyes and contemptuously looked at Tan Xiu and Yukai. He was a bit regretful that he had wasted his time on these two cowards. He might as well hug these two girls and flirt with them. At this moment, his indifferent eyes drifted past Tan Xiu and Yukai. As he was about to turn around and go back to the store, his expression suddenly changed. In the next moment, he immediately let go of the two women and strode past Tan Xiu, hurriedly rushing toward a pair of handsome man and beautiful woman a dozen meters away. Brother Chu. The man and the woman stopped. When the man saw Wu Guanghui rushing over, a look of disgust flashed in his eyes, but he still nodded and said, it's you, little Wu. Did your dad release you from the company? My performance in the company has been very good recently, Brother Chu, so my dad gave me a holiday, said Wu Guanghui with a bit of excitement. I didn't expect to meet you here. It's really an honor. And this is, sister-in-law, right? You're really a fairy-like goddess. Wu Guanghui looked at the woman next to Chu Yuan. Despite being full of jealousy inside, he still maintained his composure and flattered her. Chu Yuan smiled indifferently and didn't bother to explain his relationship with Xueyu. Today, he took the initiative to invite Xueyu out for a stroll since she had just arrived in Shanghai. Although Tan Xiu had bought a lot of daily necessities and clothes for her, she still wanted to come here to buy some clothes and jewelry for herself. She must dress herself up beautifully if she wanted to attract Tan Xiu. Suddenly, Chu Yuan's expression moved because he inadvertently saw two people coming from the opposite side. One of them turned out to be Tan Xiu. When he subconsciously looked at Xueyu, he found that she had also seen Tan Xiu and directly walked toward Tan Xiu. Why are you here? Tan Xiu felt a bit helpless upon seeing Xueyu and Chu Yuan. However, seeing the arrogant and despotic Wu Guanghui running to Chu Yuan and bowing his head and waist made him laugh and cry. Xueyu let out a faint smile and pulled Tan Xiu's arm, saying, Chu Yuan said that we're going out to meet. It's boring to go to the tea house, so I brought him here to buy some clothes and jewelry. Tan Xiu nodded and looked at Chu Yuan, who was coming over and said, how was it? Did you manage to persuade her? Haven't you seen her character yet? Chu Yuan directly shook his head. Even 10 bulls can't pull her back once she's determined. But you're too much, Tan Xiu. You even made her your lover. I do, replied Xueyu with dissatisfaction. Tan Xiu couldn't help but burst into laughter. He glanced at the shocked Yu Kai and the dumbfounded Wu Guanghui. Pointing to Wu Guanghui, Tan Xiu asked, "Do you know this brat?" "I know his father and have some business cooperation with him." Chu Yuan nodded. "This brat is not a good thing. He's an arrogant and despotic young master," said Tan Xiu. "You'd better have less contact with him in the future. Also, I'm afraid his father is also not a good person for being able to teach such a son. Try not to cooperate with him in the future if possible, so as to avoid losing money." "Did this brat provoke you?" Chu Yuan was surprised. "It's nothing. It's just a trivial matter." Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "There's no need to stoop to his level. Anyways, let me introduce you. This is my college classmate and brother, Yu Kai. Yu Kai, this is Chu Yuan. You can call him Brother Chu later." Yu Kai hurriedly stretched out his hand and said, "Hello, Brother Chu. I've long heard of your name. You're a legend in Shanghai's business district and a fierce man in the domestic financial world. I didn't expect you to be friends with Big Bro Tang." Chu Yuan's posture was very low. He shook hands with Yu Kai and smilingly said, "Please don't make fun of me, Brother Yu Kai. I'm not even qualified to carry shoes for Big Bro Tang." Chapter 676. Yu Kai hadn't expected that Chu Yuan would flatter Tan Xiu like this. Recalling Tan Xiu's past performance, his heart suddenly jumped and he finally realized that Tan Xiu's identity might not be simple. Eldest brother Tang, Yu Kai opened his mouth, wanting to say something but hesitating. Tan Xiu felt somewhat helpless. Chu Yuan had flattered him too much in front of Yu Kai, which made it difficult for him to dismount. After hesitating for a while, he didn't feel like concealing it and said, "The magnificent Tang Corporation is mine, and the everlasting feast hall is also mine. I have a lot of money, more than many people can imagine. But money is just a worldly possession. We are brothers, so it doesn't matter what the other party's identity is, as long as we hit it off." Yu Kai's expression was a little stunned. Looking at Tan Xiu's extremely calm expression, he suddenly didn't know what to say. On the other hand, Wu Guanghui's body couldn't help but tremble. His eyes were filled with shock. The magnificent Tang Corporation? The everlasting feast hall. Wu Guanghui knew about the everlasting feast hall, one of the most upscale restaurants in Shanghai. He heard that it wasn't a main branch, but a branch in Shanghai. He wouldn't be shocked if it was only this restaurant, but the name of the magnificent Tang Corporation was too resounding for him. In particular, he had heard from his father 2 days ago that the magnificent Tang Corporation had bought a large piece of land in Shanghai and was preparing to build its HQ as well as an industrial park. Nearly all the top 20 real estate companies in the country had received invitations from the magnificent Tang Corporation, and the bidding would be held soon. His family's Wanjian group could only be ranked at the middle level in the domestic construction industry and was not qualified to participate in the magnificent Tang Corporation's bidding project. But his father had also said that if the operation was good, he could cooperate with the company that won the bid. Even if he only got a little bit of soup, he could still make a lot of money. "Pa!" Wu Guanghui suddenly raised his hand and slapped his own face. At this moment, his arrogant and domineering attitude was completely gone, replaced by a face full of remorse. He said, "Boss. Boss Tang, I was muddle-headed before. I had eyes but failed to recognize empty tie. Please don't lower yourself to my level if I have offended you." Tan Xiu waved his hand in disgust and said, "All right, hurry up and pick up girls. Don't embarrass yourself here." At this moment, Xia Xiaotong, who had followed them, was dumbfounded. Never once did she expect that Tan Xiu turned out to be the big boss of the magnificent Tang Corporation. It seemed that he also had other businesses besides the magnificent Tang Corporation. Thinking of how she had insulted him with sarcasm just now, she immediately tensed up and regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. She compared them and suddenly realized that Wu Guanghui, who was outstanding in many people's eyes, was far inferior to Tan Xiu. Tan Xiao had built his own business and became the true controller of a large corporation. Wu Guanghui, on the other hand, was only from a wealthy family, but he himself was a hedonistic young master. Pa! Suddenly, a slap landed on her face. It was Wu Guanghui. Wu Guanghui rolled up his sleeves and slapped Xia Xiaotong. He pointed at her and angrily cursed, "It's all because of you, bitch. You wanted to seduce me. If I had known that you and this Mr. You knew each other, who the hell would dare to touch you? Get lost, don't let me see you again." Xia Xiaotong was slapped silly. She never dreamed that Wu Guanghui would suddenly slap her. It was as if she was the one who caused all the trouble. Humiliation. But she regretted it even more. Xia Xiaotong knew that she was not a good woman, but she never thought that fawning and flattery would lead to such a situation. At this moment, she suddenly felt that she was really stupid to the extreme. It turned out that she was really a snob in their eyes, a bitch who was to be played by men. Bitch. Xia Xiaotong thought of this word. Her heart felt like it was being pricked by needles, and the blood on her face instantly faded away. She did not resist, nor did she get angry. She staggered away as if she had lost her soul. Tan Xiao quietly watched all of this. He didn't sympathize with Xia Xiaotong at all. A pitiful person must have a hateful side. Today's situation and consequences were all brought upon by herself. Further, he hated Wu Guanghui even more. He didn't even bother to look at him and said, "Chu Yuan, are you going to continue strolling around?" Or, Shui Yu didn't wait for Chu Yuan to speak and straightforwardly said, "We won't stroll around. I'll accompany you." Chu Yuan opened his mouth, but a wry smile immediately appeared on his handsome face. He shook his head and sighed, "Sure enough, a married woman is like the water that has been poured out. Girls are always attracted to their husbands. Since you value your lover more than your friends, then I'll go back. Tan Xiao, remember what you said. Let's have a drink some other day." Tang Xiao let out a smile and nodded as he watched Chu Yuan leave. Yu Kai's mood was very complicated. He looked at the beautiful Shui Yu beside Tan Xiao, and then shifted his eyes to Tan Xiao and probingly asked, "You still want me to help you?" Tan Xiao pondered for a moment before he shook his head and said, "Forget it. I'm afraid you don't have the mood. Let Shui Yu accompany me since I met her here." Deal. Yu Kai indeed didn't have the mood. He happily nodded and walked a few steps away. Suddenly, he seemed to realize something. He stopped, turned around and asked aloud, "Big Bro Tang, you're not going to buy her clothes, are you?" "Nope." Tan Xiao shook his head. "Fuck." Yu Kai had the heart to bang his head and die after hearing the answer. Comparisons were odious, and he had completely lost his temper. He had seen a lot of experts in picking up girls, but he had never seen any amazing man who could bring his lover to buy clothes for another woman. "Here's your money." The female cashier of the Hermes exclusive store didn't leave. She witnessed the beginning and the end of the whole farce with her own eyes. She was very disgusted and despised Wu Guanghui, and even despised Xia Xiaotong, thinking that she was a disgrace among women. She sympathized with Yu Kai at first, but later on, she was happy for him. Although she didn't expect that the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss turned out to be a handsome guy, Yu Kai was definitely blessed to have such a brother. What was brotherly love? The magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss only meant one thing. Brothers shouldn't talk about money. Brothers with money were brothers, and brothers without money were also brothers. What was this called? True temperament and pure manliness. Yu Kai was stunned. He turned to look at Tan Xiao again, only to find that Tan Xiao just waved at him and left with Shui Yu. "You can take the money. You can't take back what you've given away. You can't take it back. As a matter of fact, this money is from Big Bro Tang. He's a local tycoon, so don't take it seriously." Seeing that Yu Kai was about to leave, the female cashier quickly stopped him and shook her head. "No. A gentleman doesn't take food out of pity. It's not my money, so I can't take it no matter what. Besides, I don't think that brother of yours is someone who owes money. You don't have enough money to pick up girls, so you borrowed it from him, right? There's something I've always wanted to tell you, but we're not familiar with each other, so I've been holding it back. But now, I can't care about it anymore. Taking other people's money and pretending to be a rich young master is really not a man. You're still young and should be studying or starting your own business. It doesn't matter if you don't have money now, but don't be greedy for enjoyment. Wait until you earn enough money and become like those two women just now. You'll definitely have a lot of them. Please take this money back. Yukai was stunned. He looked at the female cashier in disbelief and felt his face burning. Being humiliated by Wu Guanghui just now had already made him feel aggrieved. Now, even a waitress despised him. Suddenly, an evil fire ignited in his heart. He grabbed the 30,000 yuan in cash and stuffed it into another pocket. Then, he grabbed the female cashier's hand and strode toward the Hermes exclusive store. They entered the store. Yukai loosened the female cashier's struggling hand. He grabbed the nearest 4 Hermes bags and directly threw them on the cashier counter. Then, he took out his credit card and said in a deep voice, "Swipe my card. I want all 4 bags." The female cashier stared blankly for a moment before a surprised look appeared on her face. Did I just see it wrong? He's not borrowing money to pick up girls. Is he really rich? Countless big question marks appeared on her forehead. She hesitated for a moment before she forced a smile and said, "Sir, I hope you won't stoop to my level if there's anything wrong with what I just said. You don't have to be angry with me and buy 4 bags that you don't need. You must know that the total price of these 4 bags is more than 100,000 yuan. Swipe my card." Yukai said with a gloomy face. The female cashier opened her mouth and found that Yukai didn't listen to her advice. She immediately became a bit angry and directly flipped the label. After calculating the number, she said, "The total price of these 4 bags is 118,000 yuan. Are you sure you want to pay by card?" Swish. Yukai said resolutely and decisively. Although the female cashier was angry in her heart, she still looked at Yukai hesitantly. After seeing his ice-cold face, she picked up the overdraft card and swiped it. As the bill came out, she realized that she seemed to have misunderstood Yukai. A customer who could swipe 118,000 yuan did not need to borrow money from others at all. Yukai shot a deep look at the female cashier before he turned around and left. The female cashier was stunned. The 4 bags were still on the cashier's desk. Why did he leave? After a short pause, she hurriedly called out, "You haven't taken your bags yet." Yukai said without turning his head, "I'm in a bad mood today. Can't I just throw the money away for fun? I've given you the bags. Take them if you want, or throw them away if you don't." The female cashier felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She stood there in a daze. She didn't even notice the envious eyes of several colleagues around her. She had just returned 30,000 yuan to Yukai, but a few minutes later, she was hit by 4 Hermes bags worth 118,000 yuan. What the hell happened today? Did I run into some dog shit luck? Or did I bump into some stupid rich nouveau riche? These 4 bags. Chapter 677. Golden Eagle Shopping Center. Shuaiyu pulled Tan Xiu's arm as they slowly passed through a clothing store. The clothing stores that could be opened here were all world-renowned brands. Some people once said that this was a place for the rich to spend their money. Perhaps the cheapest pair of underwear or a pair of socks would cost 4 digits. "Who do you want to buy clothes for?" asked Shuaiyu curiously after she learned from Tan Xiu that he wanted to buy a set of women's clothing. Tan Xiu didn't conceal it and directly answered, "Ouyang Lulu." Shuaiyu had never heard of Ouyang Lulu's name, so she naturally didn't know who she was. She didn't even ask about the relationship between the other party and Tan Xiao and directly asked, "How old is she? What's her size?" Tan Xiao shook his head and forced a smile. "She's about the same age as you, about 24 or 25 years old, right? As for her size, I don't know." Shuiyu thought for a while and asked again, "You should know her height, right? Is she plump? How's her figure? And her character?" Tan Xiao was dumbfounded by Shuiyu's series of questions. After a long while, he was at a loss whether he had to laugh or cry as he asked, "Do I need to know her character when I buy clothes?" "That's natural," said Shuiyu as if it was a matter of course. "I can judge what kind of clothes she will like if I know her character." Tan Xiao thought about it and felt that what Shuiyu said was quite reasonable. Following his description, Shuiyu directly took him to several shops and finally picked a good coat. Afterward, she took Tan Xiao directly to a nearby lingerie store and bought 3 sets of underwear that young women liked. Half an hour later, as the duo left the Golden Eagle shopping center and stood outside the gate, Tan Xiao looked at Shuiyu and asked, "We've bought the clothes. Do you have anything else?" Shuiyu hesitated for a moment and said, "How about going to my place? I have something to ask you." "What is it?" asked Tan Xiao with a puzzled expression. "It's about the array," said Shuiyu. "You're not a cultivator, so why would you want to know about the array?" asked Tan Xiao curiously. "Just follow me and you'll know," said Shuiyu. Tan Xiao hesitated for a moment but still followed Shuiyu to Thompson Villa. After entering the door, he found that the villa was still the same as before. Even the quilt on the table was untouched. When they arrived at Shuiyu's bedroom, Tan Xiao glanced at her and asked curiously, "How do you eat?" Shuiyu thought for a while and said, "I've been studying the array diagram since I came here and haven't eaten anything yet. When I was called out by Chu Yuan, I wanted to eat outside, but I ended up running into you." Tan Xiao slightly furrowed his brows. He took out his mobile and dialed Mo Ao's number, telling him to buy some food from a nearby restaurant. Then, he asked, "What's the situation with the array diagram you mentioned?" Shuiyu walked to the dressing table and took out the yellowed book sewn with golden threads from the drawer. She then handed it to Tan Xiao and said, "This is something the ancestor gave me. She also told me that I can help you crack the immortal trove array as long as I thoroughly study this diagram. Originally, I planned to crack it myself and make you think that I'm a useful woman to you. But after studying it, I can only deduce bits and pieces of its mysteries even if I use the forbidden divination technique. I really can't figure out what's behind it." Tan Xiao took the book and flipped it open. His brows immediately furrowed. The content recorded on the first page made him quite puzzled. The hexagram star array. Tan Xiao had never heard of such an array. What made him even more puzzled was that as he read more and more, his eyes fell on the diagram of the hexagram star array. His brows nearly furrowed into a chuan character. This extremely rare pattern that seemed to be unable to form a formation at all had an extremely exquisite combination. He had once studied the witch clan's totem in the celestial world and discovered that the outline of the formation lines on it was somewhat similar to those of the witch clan's totem. However, this hexagram array was even more profound. "Shuiyu, tell me about your understanding of this hexagram star array." It took Tan Xiao 2 hours to finish reading more than 20 pages of content. "Actually, my understanding of this hexagram star array is pitifully little, but I still feel that it's broad and profound," said Shuiyu. "For example, the most basic structure of the array diagram, which uses points as the base and lines as the support frame. The whole diagram is a pattern, but it's subdivided into several patterns. The distance between each pattern, the distribution of the base points." "Wait." Tan Xiao's eyes suddenly lit up. He flipped to the diagram of the hexagram star array again. His fingers constantly stroked it as ripples appeared in his eyes. The base points, the array pattern, and the combination, the triangle was the solid, and the whole was the furnace. Once it was composed of spiritual force, it would no longer be a simple array. Generally speaking, the feng shui array only had one array core, but the hexagram star array was different. It had 6 array cores, and each additional array core would not only double its power, but also repeatedly overlapped, increasing the array's power by tens of times or even hundreds of times. Tan Xiu recalled the cave where Western nefarious Sunga planted medicinal herbs. The soul tranquilizer stone and the solidified dragon's eye inlaid on the ceiling perfectly combined to form the hexagram star array. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Tan Xiu took out 5 pieces of jade from his interspatial ring. After visually measuring the distance between them, he placed them according to the 5 corners of the hexagram star array. Then, he took out a relatively large piece of jade and placed it in the middle. Something's not right. After engraving the array pattern, Tan Xiu found that his simple arrangement of the hexagram star array didn't have the slightest effect. There were even some discrepancies when he observed it. This hexagram star array, suddenly, Tan Xiu's expression moved and he immediately threw away the book in his hand. He then looked at Shuiyu and said, "Did Old Blind give you this book?" "Yeah." Shuiyu nodded. "I was misled by her." Tan Xiu was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. The true array diagram is basically a mistake. What hexagram star array? It's just nonsense. I'll rearrange the array diagram for you. Take a good look at it yourself. After saying that, Tan Xiu took out another piece of jade from his interspatial ring and placed them in 6 symmetrical directions. The middle position was the center point, and the distance between the 6 pieces of jade was the same. Afterward, when he placed the last relatively large piece of jade in the middle, he constantly sketched the array pattern and instantly activated it. Boom! A terrifying aura formed on the table as though a small tornado was formed. It instantly pierced through the table and the floor, and then continued to shoot downward at an extremely fast speed. Shit! Tan Xiu's complexion changed. He instantly released his primal chaos force and wrapped the tornado almost in an instant, forcibly sweeping it back and dispelling the array at an extremely fast speed. Shuiyu was forced to take 7 or 8 steps back by the tornado that had just formed. When everything disappeared, her eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. She ran back to the table and looked at the table and the floor below. She could even clearly see a circular hole with a diameter of more than 10 centimeters that had pierced through the floor, allowing her to see the residents' homes below. It must be noted that her bedroom was on the 2nd floor of a duplex building. Just a moment ago, it actually pierced through at least 2 floors of the floor. Tan Xiu scratched the back of his head awkwardly and said with a wry smile, "I forgot that you live in a building. I didn't expect that once this array was arranged, it would burst out with such power so quickly. Fortunately, I withdrew it in time, else the entire building would have been destroyed by the storm with this hole as the center point in at most 10 seconds. Shuiyu had never seen the power of an array before. Upon hearing Tan Xiu's words, her heart violently thumped a few times. It was the first time she realized how terrifying cultivators were. "Can you teach me how to cultivate?" There was some expectation in Shuiyu's eyes, but there was more nervousness. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and slowly said, "Our cultivation system is different. If you can make a breakthrough according to your cultivation system, you're actually not worse than cultivators. Take Old Blind for example. I'm well aware of her strength. Even some cultivators with good cultivation are probably not her match." "I want to dual cultivate," said Shuiyu. Tan Xiu recalled that Old Blind once helped him in Kanas, as well as the fact that she was really good to him, so he nodded and said, "Since you want to be a cultivator, then I'll teach you a set of cultivation technique. Dual cultivation is actually easy. Although I'm not too familiar with your cultivation, there won't be any conflict. I've seen many people cultivating multiple cultivation techniques. Some of them amazed the world with a single brilliant feat, while others were delayed due to being distracted. Since you've chosen it, then work harder in the future." Tan Xiu was perfectly aware that even the people closest to him had the same situation as Shuiyu, such as his disciple, Gu Yan. Gu Yan, was an immortal cultivator with a very powerful strength and a relatively high cultivation level. But later on, she became a disciple of Heavenly Emperor Tianji and learned the art of divination and finally found Earth. I can help you find a teacher if there's an opportunity later. A bright smile appeared on Tan Xiu's face. He suddenly felt that it was not a bad thing to let Xueyu become a cultivator. If Gu Yan, could guide her well, she might have a chance to ascend to the immortal world in the future. Xueyu was clueless about Tan Xiu's thoughts and curiously asked, "What teacher?" "The one who will teach me how to cultivate." "She can teach you how to cultivate and also teach you the art of divination." Tan Xiu chuckled. "Besides, with her attainments, even the dark and mysterious heavenly secrets can't trap her." Xueyu shook her head and said, "You must be joking. Even if I become a divine diviner, I'm afraid." Tan Xiu waved his hand to interrupt her and said, "Don't look at things from the perspective of mortals like you. There are a lot of things you don't understand. Only when your strength reaches that level will you be able to understand the abilities of a cultivator, or rather, an immortal cultivator." Xueyu nodded with a half-understanding expression and curiously asked, "Then, when will you teach me how to cultivate?" "What I'm going to teach you is not a Taoist cultivation technique, but an immortal cultivation technique," corrected Tan Xiu. "But keep in mind that you must never teach this cultivation technique to anyone without my permission." "I'll keep it in mind." Xueyu nodded repeatedly. Chapter 678. Xueyu didn't know the difference between immortal cultivators and Taoist cultivators, so she didn't ask about it. She was looking forward to Tan Xiu imparting her an immortal cultivation technique so that she could become a powerful figure in the future. She even found that she had developed a strong interest in arrays. She wanted to learn it and study it if she had the opportunity later. "You haven't told me when you'll teach me." Tan Xiu looked at the time and suddenly recalled something. He asked, "You haven't eaten yet? Didn't I tell Ao to buy it?" "Ao came back a long time ago," Xueyu said with a smile, "but you didn't hear it because you were too obsessed with that book." "I suddenly don't feel hungry now. How about you teach me now?" "There's no hurry." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "Let's eat first and then I'll teach you." An hour later, Tan Xiu and Xueyu had eaten and drunk to their heart's content. When they returned to Xueyu's bedroom, Tan Xiu directly said, "Take off your clothes. I'll teach you how to identify the acupoints and meridian routes first. After you've learned everything I'll teach you, I'll tell you the circulation route of the cultivation technique." "Take off my clothes?" Xueyu hesitated for a moment before she silently took off her outer clothes. Under Tan Xiu's watchful gaze, she also took off her inner shirt. When she was only left with her underwear, her fair face blushed and her ears turned slightly red. She had never worn so little in front of any man since she was a child. There was a special rule in the Miao region's territory. Any girl born there was not allowed to let any man see her face or even her body. Not even the elders, such as her father. Furthermore, she was still a virgin girl. Even if she was ready to give her first time to Tang Xiu, and even every time in the future, she was still full of shyness and nervousness right now. Tan Xiu looked at Xueyu's perfect and delicate body. Actually, it was enough to strip her like this. But when he saw her blushing and shy appearance, despite his strong self-control and the fact that he had vented a lot from Ouyang Lulu yesterday and today, the flame of desire was still ignited. Take it all off. Sometimes, if there was a first time, there would be a second, and if there was a first, there would be a second. For example, if a woman cheated once, it was inevitable that she would let go of her reservations and think that it was okay to do it again since she had already done it once. Tan Xiu had this kind of mentality at the moment. Since he wanted Ouyang Lulu's body, it didn't matter if he wanted Xueyu's body. In front of a beauty, he didn't want to restrict himself. Can I not take it off? That's coming. Xueyu's voice trembled, and her ears turned redder. Tan Xiu stared blankly and immediately groaned inwardly. With a bit of embarrassment and annoyance, he touched his nose and said, If so, then forget it. I'll try my best to teach you a few more times. Maybe you'll be able to remember it. Yes. Shuiyu secretly observed Tan Xiu's expression and found that he was a little disappointed. Suddenly, a different kind of emotion was born in her heart. Tan Xiu used to act like a gentleman, so she thought that she was not attractive to Tan Xiu. But now, looking at his slightly disappointed expression, she found that she was quite charming. Time fleeted by. Just as the two of them were immersed in the atmosphere of teaching and learning, a scream suddenly came from downstairs. The owner of the scream was a woman with a very high decibel voice. Shit, I just pierced the floor and forgot to deal with this. Tan Xiu suddenly jumped up from the bed. He grabbed Shuiyu's clothes and threw them to her, saying, "Hurry up and put on your clothes. We need to solve this problem first before we continue." Shuiyu also knew that there was something to deal with at the moment, so she quickly put on her clothes and followed Tan Xiu out of the door. When the two of them came down the stairs, they saw a middle-aged man in pajamas rushing out of the house, followed by a woman with disheveled hair. "Are you the owner of this house?" Tan Xiu looked at them and asked. The man looked a bit frightened and angry. Upon seeing Tan Xiu and Shuiyu coming down from upstairs, he immediately shouted, "That's right. This is my house. Who are you?" "We're the residents living upstairs of your house." Tan Xiu smilingly said, "I'm really sorry. It was a small accident that caused the floor to be pierced. If it has affected you, I apologize to you here. No matter how much compensation you need, I can accept it." The middle-aged man's expression instantly turned gloomy and he angrily said, "Compensation? Do you think this is something that can be solved with money? My house was originally fine, but a hole suddenly appeared in the roof and even pierced through 2 floors. Go to my house and have a look. My study is already in a mess, and my master bedroom is like a thief." Tan Xiu knew that he was in the wrong, so he let out a hollow laugh and hurriedly said, "Big brother, don't be anxious. Let's talk this out. I'm indeed in the wrong this time for affecting your life. How about this, I'll compensate you 10 times the loss. If you find it troublesome, I'll immediately find a maintenance worker or buy all the damaged things in your house." Upon seeing Tan Xiu's sincere and humble attitude, the middle-aged man's anger immediately subsided. After a moment of silence, he slowly said, "What's your name?" "Tan Xiu." The middle-aged man faintly felt that the name was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it. On the contrary, the woman who was tidying her hair suddenly pointed at Tan Xiu and exclaimed, "Ah, it's you. You're the famous young divine Dr. Tan Xiu. Aren't you in Star City? How come you're in Shanghai?" Upon hearing his wife's reminder, the middle-aged man immediately recalled Tan Xiu's identity. Even more so, it was far more than that. "Brother Tan Xiu, it turns out to be you." Sigh. "I wouldn't have used that kind of attitude just now if I had remembered it was you. Your name is like a thunderclap reverberating in my ears," said the middle-aged man with a smile. Tan Xiu forced a smile and said, "Big brother, and big sister-in-law, I didn't expect you to know me. But I'm really sorry about this matter. It's because of an accident that affected you." The middle-aged man waved his hand and said, "It's all right. It's not like a flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple. You don't need to be polite with us. People always say that distant relatives are not as good as close neighbors. That's right, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Yu Kuizhen, the chairman of the Tiancheng Group. This is my wife, Wang Xiaoye." The Tiancheng Group. Tan Xiu knew about this company. There were only a few people in Shanghai who didn't know about this company. The Tiancheng Group mainly engaged in automobile sales, automobile after-sales, and even dabbled in the sales of mechanical parts. While studying economics, he also learned about a lot of legendary figures in the business world, and the one in front of him was one of them. Yu Kuizhen was poor before the age of 19 and was just a maintenance worker in a car shop. Later on, he resigned and opened a small repair shop. Due to his good skills and honesty, he eventually opened a big repair shop after more than 2 years of accumulation. Later on, he resolutely took a loan from the bank and cooperated with several car manufacturers that didn't sell well in China. At the same time, he set up 3 car 4S shops. Because he was honest and very shrewd, his business grew bigger and bigger. More than 10 years ago, he even came into contact with high-end cars. As a result, his business grew bigger and bigger, and he now had at least a few billion yuan in wealth. It was no wonder that he could afford the Thompson Villa, which used to be ranked first in Shanghai and even the first in the country. It turns out to be you, big brother you. It's my fault that I didn't recognize you just now. Speaking of which, I've read several issues of your financial magazines and even watched the content of your interview on TV, said Tan Xiu with a smile. You also know me, Brother Tang. Yu Kuizeng was surprised. We're all businessmen, so we naturally pay more attention to businessmen, said Tan Xiu with a smile. Especially a successful businessman like you, big brother you, so of course you know something about me. Hearing Tan Xiu's words, Yu Kuizeng felt happy inwardly. Although he had billions of assets, he was also aware of Tan Xiu's identity. The magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss was relatively low-key, but he happened to have a good relationship with several rich and powerful friends in Shanghai's business circle. Among them was Jin Xinkue, who had mentioned this Brother Tang many times. Come, Brother Tang, and this one, let's go home and talk. Hello, big brother you. Hello, sister-in-law. My name is Shuiyu, said Shuiyu with a smile. Sister-in-law is really beautiful, just like a fairy, said Wang Xiaoye with a smile. Brother Tang Xiu is really blessed to be able to find such a beautiful wife, said Tang Xiu. Tan Xiu didn't explain the relationship between him and Shuiyu. After entering Yu Kuizeng's home, he first went to Yu Kuizeng's study room to have a look. He found that the tornado triggered by the array was even more powerful and had turned the study room into a mess. Standing in front of Tan Xiu, Yu Kuizeng looked up at the hole in the ceiling and forced a smile. Brother Tang, I really can't figure it out. How did you do it? To think that you could actually make such a hole. You must know that this is the first floor of my house. When Tan Xiu just came down, he had already thought about this question and also thought about how to reply, so he let out a dry smile and said, I've recently developed a special technological product in the laboratory I've prepared. This product is somewhat related to the military, so I won't disclose the details. I just showed off to Shuiyu upstairs and showed off its power. Only then did I remember that we were upstairs, so. Yu Kuizeng's complexion slightly changed. He didn't expect that Tan Xiu actually had some connection with the military, so he immediately dispelled the thought of asking. Big brother you, I hope you can help me keep what I told you and the problem caused by this accident a secret, said Tan Xiu. After all, this technological product has some cooperation with the military, and the magnificent Tang Corporation can't disclose it. It will be very troublesome if it were to be spread out. I understand. Don't worry. Yu Kuizeng nodded solemnly. The monthly votes have hardly changed recently. It seems that Silent Night has no choice but to erupt. The monthly votes game will continue. For every 100 monthly votes, Silent Night will add 1 chapter. Her eruption has no upper limit. Brothers and sisters, keep it up _. Chapter 679. Tan Xiu didn't want to owe a favor, so he damaged Yu Kuizeng's house and destroyed a lot of his belongings. Eventually, Tan Xiu insisted on compensating. After all, it was already late at night. After a brief conversation, they hurriedly looked for the property's maintenance workers, who then contacted the masons. It took them 2 hours to fill the hole. Late at night, Tan Xiu left the Thompson Villa complex. Although Shuiyu wanted him to stay, Ouyang Lulu was still at home. Tan Xiu and Shuiyu warmed up for a moment and then walked out of the villa complex's gate. After returning to his residence, Tan Xiu found that the light in the bedroom on the second floor was on. Apparently, Ouyang Lulu had woken up. When he came to the second floor, he saw Ouyang Lulu leaning on a pillow, reading a fashion magazine with great interest. On the bedside table was an unfinished jujube and lotus seed soup. "Did you sleep enough?" Tan Xiu walked to the bed with a smile. He looked at Ouyang Lulu, who was wearing a white sling, exposing her lotus root-like white and smooth arms. Her sexy, snow-white skin under her collarbone, as well as her ample cleavage. At the same time, he conveniently put aside the clothes he bought for her. Ouyang Lulu thought that Tan Xiu wouldn't come back tonight. She didn't expect that he would come back so late at night. She was immediately filled with excitement and happiness. She sat on the bed and said with a sweet smile, "I slept soundly and sweetly. I dare say that this is the longest and most comfortable sleep I've ever had in my life." Tan Xiu pointed to the electronic clock hanging on the wall and said with a smile, "It's only 12:30 now. I'm afraid I won't have any energy during the day if I continue to sleep like this." "What's there to be afraid of?" Ouyang Lulu giggled. "At the worst, I'll continue to sleep during the day." "What did you do today? Why did you come back so late?" "I accompanied my girlfriend to the company and met my lover's place. In any case, I didn't do anything serious today and just bumped into some scumbags," Tan Xiu said casually. "Anyways, let's not talk about this. I'm going to take a shower first and sleep later." That night, Tan Xiu hugged Ouyang Lulu to sleep. Although the smooth and tender body in his bosom made him restless, but considering that Ouyang Lulu was still a virgin and had been tossed and turned by him twice, he still endured it. Early morning. When the first ray of sunlight shone into the room through the gap of the curtains, Tan Xiu woke up from his sleep. Just as he moved, Ouyang Lulu, who was sleeping like a docile kitten in his arms, was awakened. When she opened her sleepy eyes, she asked, "What time is it?" Looking at the time, Tan Xiu smiled, 8:10. Ouyang Lulu propped up her arm and sat up. She saw that Tan Xiu had gotten up and quickly put on his clothes. She immediately smiled and asked, "It's Sunday today, what are you going to do?" Tan Xiu said, "It's not decided yet." Ouyang Lulu asked, "Do you want to go to Paradise Manor with me? You haven't been there for a long time. My trusted subordinates all thought that we had a falling out and you dumped me." Cough, cough. Tan Xiu coughed twice and said with an expression of being at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh, "Your subordinates are really worrying about nothing. It's useless to think about such things. Forget it. I have nothing to do today anyway, so I'll go with you. Here, this is the clothes I bought for you yesterday. Try it on and see if it fits you." Ouyang Lulu was surprised. She took it and looked at it. With an incredulous expression, she asked, "Did you buy this for me?" "Yeah." Tan Xiu nodded. Ouyang Lulu incredulously said, "Isn't your eyesight too amazing? Whether it's the underwear or the coat, they are all my favorite styles and colors. Honey, I think you should directly open a clothing factory. The business will absolutely be great." Tan Xiu secretly blushed with shame. He did buy these clothes, but he didn't say that he chose them. However, looking at Ouyang Lulu's appearance, he didn't want to tell her about Shuiyu. With a faint smile, he said, "Put it on quickly. We'll go to Paradise Manor after breakfast." "All right." Ouyang Lulu hurriedly jumped up and quickly took off her underwear. This kind of action that didn't hide anything from Tan Xiu made Tan Xiu's throat dry. His eyes stared blankly and the fire in his lower abdomen burned. However, in order to avoid the desire from being completely aroused again, he directly turned around and left the bedroom. "Boss." At the stairway on the first floor, Mo was holding a stack of documents and standing there quietly. "Are you waiting for me?" Tan Xiu was surprised. "Is there something?" Mo handed over the documents and said, "A supernatural incident happened in Min'an district. 4 women working in a nightclub were killed. The cause of their death is very strange. I received the news at 4 a.m. and rushed there. But the place was blocked by the police and I couldn't see the situation at the scene. What does a criminal case have to do with us? Tan Xiu was confused. You've never given me this kind of information before. Mo always said, I won't disturb you if it's an ordinary criminal case. But it's different this time. The blood of the 4 dead bodies has been sucked clean, and there are a lot of traces of fighting at the scene in the photos. I've seen these traces before, and they belong to a divergent race. A divergent race? Tan Xiu had never heard of such a term after returning to Earth. He curiously asked, what is a divergent race? What's so special about it? There are many special species in the world, such as the fierce beasts with spiritual wisdom, said Mo. But there are also some non-human beings or half-human beings, such as the vampire bats that can transform into human form, also known as vampires. There are also half-beastmen who have both human and beast bloodlines, as well as the sorcerers who practice special cultivation arts. The most common divergent race is a real human, but they have special abilities. Tang Xiu observed the situation of the scene in the photo in his hand and found that there were a lot of special traces of fighting, such as the hole in the wall that was torn, the claw marks that were sprinkled with phosphor powder, and some feathers and hairy pieces of meat. You mean, the killer of the 4 nightclub girls is a divergent race with claws and feathers? Tan Xiu slowly asked. That should be right. Mo nodded. From the information and photos, I can judge that at least 1 half-beastman, 1 feather, and 1 vampire participated in the battle. These things you just mentioned should only exist in Western mythology, right? Tan Xiu frowned. How did they come to our country? As far as I know, the number of cultivators in China can be counted with one's fingers, and those with special abilities are pitifully few. If these things really exist in foreign countries, why haven't I heard of them before? These divergent races are also very rare in foreign countries, but they do exist in this world, said Mo. I once encountered them on the battlefield and witnessed them killing many mercenaries. I also encountered a vampire during an assassination mission in an ancient castle. Aside from me and another person, the other 3 of my companions all died in the hands of that vampire. My other companion and I used a grenade to injure it, and then successfully escaped after the assassination. Are these things very evil? Asked Tan Xiu with a frown. Mo shook his head and said, Our everlasting feast hall has conducted a secret investigation. Some people even bought this information from the Dark Wind organization. Mo shook his head and said, although the information we obtained is very little, we can infer that some of these divergent races are very evil, but some of them won't act recklessly and kill the innocent. As a matter of fact, if it weren't for the chaos in some foreign countries, these divergent races would be more proficient in hiding than cultivators. Let alone ordinary people, even many people with powerful backgrounds wouldn't know of their existence. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and slowly asked, with your current cultivation, can you defeat the half-beastman you saw on the battlefield and the vampire you encountered in the castle? Mo hesitated for a moment before he shook his head and forced a smile. I don't know. I was very far away from that half-beastman on the battlefield and saw him through a high-powered telescope. His speed was very fast, his strength was very strong, and he was also proficient in the art of killing. He simply had an unstoppable momentum, and in just half a minute, he had killed dozens of fully armed mercenaries. As for that vampire, I might be able to kill him with a burst of power. So to say, they're actually more powerful than those mid-level fierce beasts? Asked Tan Xiu in surprise. That should be the case. Mo nodded. After all, their intelligence is on par with humans, and some divergent races even have higher intelligence than humans. They're indeed more powerful than many mid-level fierce beasts in terms of speed, strength, and offensive means. Tan Xiu's eyes instantly lit up after hearing it. He needed all kinds of heavenly treasures for his cultivation. If he could kill some vampires and half-beastmen and use their corpses to cultivate, it should have a good effect. The most important thing was that these divergent races also had their own cultivation system. Their bodies should be more powerful, and their corpses should be better. Oh, to what extent is the intelligence network established by our everlasting feast hall in Shanghai? Asked Tan Xiu quickly. It's at least several times stronger than the National Intelligence Organization, said Mo. Although I dare not say that it covers the entire Shanghai, our intelligence personnel are in most areas. Little boss knows that you live in Shanghai, so the first area to expand our intelligence network is in Shanghai. This is also the reason why I was able to receive the information on the scene of the divergent race's murder in a very short time and rush over there. Then, immediately send someone to investigate those divergent races, said Tan Xiu in a deep voice. Whether they are vampires, half-beastmen, or wingmen, they are a threat to our people since they appeared in Shanghai. Find them and I'll deal with them myself. I'll arrange it right away. Mo replied and turned to leave. Chapter 680. The Golden Cypress Hotel in Shanghai's Rainbow District was barely a 3-star hotel. The hotel's occupancy rate was average, and the business was bleak recently, with fewer guests coming to stay. Han Jintong's complexion was as pale as paper with bloodstains on the corner of his mouth. He was sitting in the corner of the guest room on the 7th floor, his body riddled with scars as he sutured his hideous wounds with a needle and thread. 4 to 5 meters away from him was a Caucasian woman with long blonde hair. Her black robe was tattered and stained with blood. Professor, leave. The Caucasian woman had scarlet pupils in her eyes. Her fair hands, which had sharp nails, were caressing a concave bronze mirror that she had removed from the left side of her chest. Han Jintong stubbornly shook his head and said, Shanjena, I don't know why they're chasing you. But you're my best student and have been my sparring partner for several years. Under such circumstances, I can't, cough. I can't abandon you. With despair on her face, Shanjena shook her head and said, You've helped me enough, Professor. You're seriously injured now, and your chances of survival will be very small if you continue to stay with me. I've put the skull badge in the residential building where we met yesterday. It's the safe where I'm hiding. I hope you can help me deliver the skull badge to Salzburg and hand it over to my big brother in person after you're safe. It's related to the fate of my only family member. I told you that I won't abandon you, said Han Jintong in a deep voice. If you want to give the skull badge to your big brother, you can go by yourself after this crisis is over. Shanjena bitterly said, Professor, the one chasing me is Grove Bear. He's a gold assassin of the Stygian Club. Although the hunting squad he led only has 5 members, all of them are silver elite, consisting of 2 beast men, 1 vampire, and 2 wingmen. The ones who attacked us yesterday were only a beast man, a vampire, and a wingman. The other 2 silver assassins didn't appear. The most important one is Grove Bear. He hasn't shown up yet, but I'm sure he must have come to Shanghai. If Grove Bear had appeared last night, we wouldn't have had the chance to escape. Tell me, why are they chasing you? Asked Han Jintong with a frown. A ferocious expression suddenly appeared on Shanjena's face as she said, the Stygian Club's shadow branch has established a meat grinder factory. Its members secretly capture ordinary humans from all over the world, eat their flesh and devour their souls. They even use a large number of ordinary people to conduct live experiments and secretly research high-performance weapons. I inadvertently knew the exact location of the meat grinder factory, and the note with the precise coordinates was hidden in the skull badge. Han Jintong's expression changed and he angrily said, I once knew that the Stygian Club was not a good organization, so I refused to join it. I even came back from abroad and was ready to spend the rest of my life in China. I didn't expect them to be so arrogant, daring to chase you all the way to Huaxia and even killing ordinary people in Huaxia. Professor, please leave. Shanjena said. The enemy is too strong. Once they get here, I'll be in charge of luring them away. You should hurry up and escape. Han Jintong gritted his teeth and said, Shanjena, you don't need to persuade me anymore. If I can't even protect my student, I won't have any face left to live. However, the strength of the two of us is far from enough to deal with those assassins. It seems that I can only ask my old friends for help. After saying that, he struggled to stand up by holding the wall and picked up the mobile phone that had its battery thrown out. After reinstalling the battery, he found that the phone could still be used and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Just as his finger was about to press the dial button, he suddenly realized something and his eyes fell on Shanjena again. The strength of my two old friends is about the same as mine. Since they're not a match for those three assassins, even if I join hands with Shanjena, I'm afraid it won't have much effect even if I ask my two old friends for help. I'll only implicate them instead. But how am I supposed to solve the current crisis if I don't ask them for help? Han Jintong's expression constantly changed. After a long while of silence, Tan Xiu's appearance suddenly appeared in his mind. Ask him for help, will he agree? Given his identity and ability, dealing with those assassins shouldn't be a problem. How much do I want to pay if he agrees? He pondered and hesitated. Han Jintong looked at the scarred Shanjena before he finally gritted his teeth and dialed Tan Xiu's cell number. At Paradise Club. Tan Xiu and Ouyang Lulu had just arrived and had yet to get out of the car when their mobile phone rang. He took it out and looked at the number on the screen before he picked it up and said, "Is there something you need from me?" With a bit of expectation, Han Jintong said, "Mr. Tang, can I ask you for a favor? Or what price do I need to pay? Can you help me?" Not interested. Tan Xiu directly hung up the phone after saying that. Had Han Jintong not said the last sentence, perhaps he would have considered it. But Han Jintong actually asked him what price he needed to pay in exchange for his help, which made him somewhat disgusted. "Who's that, Tan Xiu?" Ouyang Lulu, who had already gotten out of the car, looked at Tan Xiu and asked curiously. "An unimportant person who wants my help," Tan Xiu said flatly. Ouyang Lulu didn't ask again, but skillfully held Tang Xiu's arm and smilingly said, "You're the proprietress of our Paradise Club from today onward. You can play with our family's business however you want, and you can do whatever you want. Besides, the money invested here is all earned by me, so it's not a problem even if I have to spend it all. At worst, I'll just ask my family for the dowry money." Lady Boss. Tan Xiu was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh as he listened to Ouyang Lulu's address. However, his mood was quite complicated, because it was an eye-opener for him. What was the meaning of, "A married woman is the same as spilled water"? Ouyang Lulu hadn't married yet, but she had already started to side with an outsider. At Kimber Hotel. A bitter expression appeared on Han Jintong's face as he listened to the busy tone coming from his phone. He didn't expect that Tan Xiu would be so heartless. He didn't even ask anything and directly refused him. "It's useless, Professor." Shanjena wriggled her lower lip and two fangs were suddenly revealed. A cold light suddenly burst out from her despairing eyes as she shifted her gaze toward the door. A pair of severely damaged wings suddenly spread out from her back as she dashed to Han Jintong's side almost in an instant. She reached out to grab Han Jintong's shoulder and dashed out from the open window. Her speed was extremely fast, leaving only a series of afterimages in the air. Her figure had already rushed to the top of the 5-story building opposite her. Pop! The silver bullet shot out in a spiral direction as though it pierced through the space barrier and instantly hit Shanjena's wings. As the wings burst into flames, Shanjena screamed and immediately fell to the top of the building. Fortunately, Han Jintong had sharp eyes and quick hands. He instantly grabbed Shanjena and jumped down the other building the moment he landed. Injuries. At this moment, Han Jintong's movements were somewhat affected. But he had a very high cultivation, after all. The moment he fell down, his arm instantly grabbed the windowsill on the second floor. He then kicked the glass window and sprinted inside with Shanjena. Flee! Flee at all costs. Since the enemy had chased them, they must escape as far as possible. Otherwise, only death awaited them once they were caught. Han Jintong didn't expect that the assassins would be so bold that they dared to make a move against them in the downtown area in broad daylight. This was China. Weren't the assassins worried about provoking China's powerhouses? Suddenly, a bold idea emerged in Han Jintong's mind as he quickly ran down the corridor. He immediately kicked open a door and brought Shanjena inside. He then picked up a chair in the room and smashed it against the window. He even pulled the chair downstairs and threw it out. If he wanted to make a ruckus, it would be best if it was a big one. He didn't believe that the assassins were really bold enough to show their terrifying strength in such a big commotion. It was only in the chaos that he believed he could find a glimmer of hope to escape. Nearby, the pedestrians who were passing by on the street suddenly heard the noise. Broken glass and chairs were smashed down. Several of them were nearly hit and screamed as they ran away. A large number of pedestrians were attracted as they looked up at the window on the second floor of the building. Under a telephone pole, two young men in jackets and smoking cigarettes were looking around aimlessly. They had received orders from their superiors to go all out to find some strange people. To be precise, they were not looking for humans, but the Western vampires and the legendary beast men. What's going on? The two young men exchanged glances and subconsciously walked toward the scene of the accident. They even took out their binoculars at this moment. Brother Ye, look over there. Suddenly, a young man's body trembled. Just as he raised his arm, he found that a figure flashed and disappeared on the roof of the opposite building. What? The young man called Brother Ye curiously asked. With an excited expression, the young man hurriedly said, I can guarantee with 100% certainty that a figure flashed past just now. A person who can fly. He should be the target we're looking for. Hurry up and report. Understood. On the 5th floor, Han Jintong dragged his seriously injured body along with Shanjena, who had retracted her wings and was in a daze. He quickly ran toward the window at the end of the left corridor. The moment he opened the window, he had already jumped downstairs. It didn't take long for him to disappear into the stream of people. On the roof, a middle-aged man with a stocky build with scarlet eyes looked at the direction where Han Jintong and Shanjena disappeared. He licked his lips and muttered to himself, You can't escape. I can smell the scent of the dark soul incense from hundreds of miles away. Yesterday, the monthly votes exceeded 200. Today is the 4th update. Brothers and sisters, keep up the good work. Chapter 681. As night fell, the lanterns were lit. Tan Xiao was nestled in Ouyang Lulu's bedroom in the Paradise Club, quietly reading a financial magazine. With the widespread popularity of the internet, Tan Xiao found that the business opportunities contained in this area were extremely huge. Even with the impact of today's physical industry, the internet tycoon was making a lot of money. As a former supreme in the immortal world, he had experienced the technology of a higher civilization. It made him realize a way to make money, and even made him aware of several businesses that relied on online marketing. AI. It was once a necessity for people in a higher civilization, such as the mobile phone in today's society. The AI had a complete set of functions, integrating communication and network into one. It was convenient and portable, and contained a shopping mall in a virtual space. One could use the virtual screen to browse the internet, and one could immerse one's consciousness into the virtual shopping mall. One could achieve the effect of going out shopping even without leaving the house. Games. It also contained a gold mine of business. Elite Fighting Arena, Speed Arena, World of Cultivation, Interstellar Voyage. When Tan Xiao arrived in a higher civilization Starfield, he learned some common knowledge of this world, and the most familiar game names were these. However, after he got his hands on a AI, he didn't pay attention to other games except for the Elite Fighting Arena. He felt that there was no technical content in it. After all, with his status and strength, he was just curious about it on a whim. But, just the idea of the AI and the game, he could imagine a lot. In fact, with his experience, he could easily write a game plan. And if he wanted to make a product, the most basic thing was the research and development of AI. Tan Xiu put down the financial magazine with a vexed look in his eyes. If he didn't lose his interspatial ring in the immortal world, now, it was equal to holding a treasure house. At the very least, there was an intelligence system that he had casually tossed into his spatial ring. Although I still have some money in my hands, the speed of burning money has been maintained. If I don't think of a way to get a lot of money, I'm afraid it won't be long before I run out of money. The Everlasting Feast Hall's income is good, but the purchase of Star City's new city requires a huge capital chain, so I can't easily use the money there. The Everlasting Feast Hall is also making a lot of money every day. But with the cultivation of their subordinates, the purchase of a lot of cultivation resources, the planting of elixirs, and the breeding of fierce beasts, it's completely burning money. It's already very good that they can barely maintain the balance. Money, how can I earn more money in the shortest time possible? Tan Xiu was not a money grubber, but he still felt the pressure. He actually had a grand plan in mind, and it was to form an army of cultivators. In particular, the number of street children who had been found from all over the country had now reached 1,200. It would take a huge amount of money to nurture them. In the past, Tan Xiu was the kind of person who didn't know the cost of daily necessities. But now, he deeply felt the feeling of not having enough money. Bang bang. The door was knocked and Mo's voice came from the outside. We found some suspicious traces, boss. Our men have followed them. Tan Xiu's expression moved and he immediately expelled the problem of money from his mind. He flashed and appeared outside the door, asking in a deep voice, "Is it those strange creatures?" "That's right." Mo nodded. Some strange creatures appeared in Rainbow District's Golden Cypress Hotel during the day. Our intelligence personnel have already conducted a test. According to the traces left by those strange creatures, they have now reached the junction of Shanghai and Changxi City. They should be heading toward Mount Lao. Changxi City. Mount Lao. Tan Xiu had been there before, and it was when he first came to Shanghai. He followed Qi Nan to Mount Lao Highway for a car race. After hesitating for a moment, Tan Xiu asked, "What's the result of the police's investigation?" "The police intelligence personnel we bribed have already sent the news," said Mo. "Right now, the police are also at a loss. They haven't found the murderer who killed the 4 nightclub girls. They haven't even determined the nature of the criminal case, so they can't find out who killed them. However, I heard that the police have contacted some people from the special department. Maybe some people from the state will come soon. Forget about the police. Let's head to Changxi City immediately." Tan Xiu nodded. "I want to see how powerful those strange creatures are." Changxi City, Mount Lao. In a valley between the peaks, there was a sparkling small lake. Shanjena was curled up in a tattered black robe beside the dim lake, shivering. Her wings were pierced by a silver bullet. Although it was not a fatal wound, it made her injury worse. Han Jintong sat paralyzed beside her, gasping for breath. His pale face and messy hair vividly displayed his wretched state. "Shanjena, I suspect that we have something or smell on us that can be grasped by the assassins. That's why they can chase after us like maggots. I don't know much about you vampires, but you should be able to figure out the crux of the problem." "Or rather, there's a solution," said Han Jintong after wiping off the bloodstain on the corner of his mouth and calming down his breathing. Shanjena hesitated for a moment before she suddenly asked, "Professor, can you smell any special smell on me?" "No." Han Jintong shook his head. "Smear the blood on both sides of your nose bridge and smell it again," said Shanjena. Han Jintong stared blankly for a moment. He immediately cut his finger with a knife and smeared it on both sides of his nose bridge. After smelling it, his complexion changed and he quickly said, "It's a fragrance. It's a very faint fragrance. It smells good, but it makes me feel a bit dizzy. Shanjena's expression instantly turned extremely unsightly as she said with an awkward expression, "Professor, quickly wash the blood on both sides of your nose bridge. Damn it, we're screwed. No matter where we escape to, they'll hunt us down because they used the soul-concealing fragrance on me." "What's the soul-concealing fragrance?" asked Han Jintong quickly. "It's a special potion of our dark races that has a magical tracking effect," explained Shanjena. "Once someone is smeared with the soul-concealing fragrance, the dark races will be able to smell it. They can lock onto the target even if they are hundreds of kilometers away. They must have smeared it on me while I wasn't paying attention last night. I can't drag you down anymore, Professor. Leave quickly and don't worry about me." Han Jintong frowned and said, "Don't persuade me to leave. I can't abandon my student. Since you already know it's the soul-concealing fragrance, then wash it off quickly. Won't they not be able to find us once the soul-concealing fragrance is gone?" "I can't wash it off." Shanjena shook her head and said with a bitter expression, "The soul-concealing fragrance is a smell that escapes through the flow of blood. Unless I become a corpse and my blood turns cold, I can only wait for about half a month before it slowly disappears. With our current situation, let alone half a month, we can't even persist for 3 days. Professor, if my guess is correct, they have already caught up with us." Kakik, an ear-piercing strange laughter came from the high mountain forest. The erratic voice created a gloomy and terrifying atmosphere in the valley. Amidst the strange laughter, 5 hazy figures appeared from the woods. 2 hairy beast men, 2 feather men with wings, and a pale vampire in a black windbreaker. As soon as the 5 people appeared, they directly surrounded Han Jintong and Shanjena. "Shanjena, hand over the skull badge." The erratic voice did not come from the mouths of the 5 heterogeneous creatures. The voice seemed to come from all directions, making it impossible to determine its origin. Shanjena grabbed a crescent-shaped scimitar backhandedly, held it horizontally in front of her chest and berated, "Grove Bear, I don't have the skull badge. How can I not hide it in a safe place while being chased by high-ranking assassins like you? As the Stygian Club's gold assassin, don't hide like a coward and come out. The second heir of Salzburg, huh? You're really brave." Along with the appearance of the hazy figure, Shanjena was punched and sent flying before she could even react and heavily fell into the lake. But the next moment, Shanjena spurted out a few mouthfuls of blood and broke out of the water. She flapped her broken wings and swayed as she flew above the lake. "You're a bear, Grove Bear. But don't even think about getting the skull badge even if you kill me today. The contents inside will soon be obtained by the Radiant Castle's guardian. By then, your factory will be destroyed and all your painstaking efforts will be in vain." Shanjena's voice turned a bit sharp as she roared fiercely. "No, no, no. How can I kill you, Shanjena?" Grove Bear waved his hand and said, "You're just a beautiful little bat in my eyes. I like your body very much. I want to possess you, imprison your soul, and ravage your body day and night. I want to see you screaming, wailing, and begging for mercy under my crotch." After saying that, his eyes then fell on Han Jintong. He raised his brows and sneered, "You're not a vampire, nor do you belong to our heterogeneous race. TSK, you're actually a human. Interesting. That's really interesting. To think that Shanjena can seek help from a human. This human seems to be quite powerful. All intelligent beings are the same in my opinion." Han Jintong sneered. "There are scums among humans, but there are more scums among your heterogeneous races, such as assassins like you." Grove Bear gave a thumbs up and exclaimed in admiration, "If all humans could think like you, then we beast men would have controlled the fate of humanity long ago. We wouldn't be hiding in the dark world, not daring to use too much force, not daring to openly kill people under the sun, eating meat, drinking blood." Chapter 682. Grove Bear's despicable and shameless words were spoken in such a dignified manner. However, the bloodshed and cruelty between the lines, as well as the burning ambition, revealed his true state of mind. Humans. Perhaps in his eyes, they were as insignificant as ants. He thought that he stood at the top of the food chain, but this world was ruled by humans. His personality was molded by his unwillingness and murderous nature, and in the end, he became an assassin. He hid in the dark sky and mercilessly harvested lives. Han Jintong felt despair at this time, but the hopeless situation without the slightest chance of survival made him suddenly open his heart and overcome that fear. With the thought that he was going to die, he puffed out his chest and retorted in a forceful voice, "My Xia is a great country with a long history of 5,000 years. In every era, there have been heroes and wise sages. I believe in the three-character classic. The first point put forward is, man is born good. With your character in our Xia, you are called evil. Since ancient times, there has been a saying that, evil cannot prevail over good. This is also the reason why you evil heretics, who are poor and powerful, can only hide in the dark and struggle at death's door." Evil heretics? Grove Bear clenched his fists, his whole body surging with killing intent. He hated this name, because the damned Light Castle bastards liked to call him by this name. Kill him. I want to see the scene of minced flesh and blood flying in the sky. I want to see the scene of his soul wailing in pain. Grove Bear angrily roared. In the distant mountain forest, two figures hid behind a thick tree, watching the scene in the valley through binoculars. Although it was night, they could clearly see the situation below through the binoculars. However, their faces were filled with nervousness, and their gazes from time to time would shift away from those monsters and fall on a place not far from them. There. Lurking there were four existences that they needed to look up to. What should we do? Wait. The four hidden middle-aged men communicated through hand gestures. Although a werewolf bloodline beast man took down the heavy hammer on his back and walked towards Han Jintong with a grin, and another vampire took out a black bottle that emitted an evil aura, they were unmoved. Without orders, they could not act on their own. They had to wait for the boss orders or the boss arrival. What a pity. Jin Shi sighed from the bottom of his heart. Although he had been abroad for more than a decade, the blood of the Chinese people flowed in his bones. Facing the white-haired and scarred Han Jintong, his old body stood straight and unyielding as he spoke words that he approved of. Seeing that he was about to be killed made him feel regretful. Han Jintong didn't have a weapon. He was bare-handed as he looked at the tall and sturdy beast-man striding towards him. He clenched his teeth and mobilized the little remaining true essence in his body. He would not sit and wait for death. Even though the situation before him was certain death, he secretly swore that even if he died in the hands of the other party, he would make the other party pay a painful price. I can guarantee that you will not leave China alive. Just you wait. A terrifying expert that will make you tremble will appear in front of you and kill all of you. Han Jintong roared. He didn't even glance at Shan Zhenna, who had flown back to his side, as he pounced toward the beast men like an arrow leaving the bowstring. His blood and qi were boiling, and all the muscles in his body were tense to the limit. The power in his limbs and 5 bones was constantly being transmitted, hoping to erupt with the strongest power at this moment. Stupid human. A mocking expression appeared on the beastman's face. He flipped his wrist and the heavy hammer whizzed down. The speed of the hammer was extremely fast. If it hit, even an Iron Man would be smashed into mud. Boom, the heavy hammer penetrated the afterimages and heavily smashed on the cold dirt ground. Han Jintong didn't dodge. He was like a barbaric bull that charged forward at full speed, dashing into the beastman's chest. Han Jintong pulled out a sharp fruit knife from his body and fiercely stabbed the beastman's chest. The moment the beastman retreated, Han Jintong flipped sideways and kicked the side of the beastman's face. The sharp fruit knife broke into 2 pieces and only pierced the beastman's skin, not causing much damage. Although the beastman was kicked a few meters away, he stabilized his body in an instant. On the contrary, The moment the beast man retreated, he threw the heavy hammer and bombarded Han Jintong's arm, causing the bones in his left arm to break and his body to be knocked out. Huff! Shangena flapped her wings and instantly dashed to the place where Han Jintong fell. She spread her wings and enveloped Han Jintong, while her blood-red eyes released a crazy killing intent. She was just over 200 years old, a 20-year-old human girl according to the age of vampires. Han Jintong was her teacher, and she respected him very much after getting along with him for many years. The beast man carelessly rubbed the blood oozing from his chest and grinned strangely. You're already very powerful for a human to be able to reach such a level. It's a pity that you don't have a sharp sacred artifact, whereas my flesh and skin are harder than diamonds. So, you can't kill me, but I can easily kill you. Shangena, you damned little bat, get the fuck out of my way. Else I don't mind ravaging you first. I can easily kill you if I don't have them, you stupid wolf. Shangena shrieked. Get the fuck out of my way, else I'll drag you to hell with me. The beast man glared at Shangena disdainfully as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He raised his hairy hand and pointed his finger at his nose, asking, You wanna drag me to hell with you, huh? You're just a bragging little bat. You're the real idiot here, aren't you? You wanna blow up your core? I won't die even if you do. Shangena knew that the beast man was right. The strongest killing move she could unleash was to blow up her core. But she would also be blown to pieces and die directly after blowing up her core. The beast man laughed wildly and said, Are you afraid now? Get the fuck out of here for this grandpa, else this grandpa will blow up your balls. Suddenly, an ethereal voice came with a mocking tone, I'll definitely consider anyone who dares to say that the beast man has wisdom as an idiot in the future. How could a female vampire have? Ah-ha! The beastman's complexion changed. He quickly turned his head to look around and shouted, What the fuck is this? Get the fuck out here for this grandpa. Whoosh! 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 4 figures flickered out of the woods lightning fast. Flying swords hovered around them as they waved their arms. It was as though 4 rainbows were shot toward the beast man. Despite the beastman's extremely fast reaction speed, the 4 flying swords still tore his skin and left 4 bloody wounds on his body. Tan Xiu's figure floated over, followed by Moo and 6 other experts of the everlasting feast hall. They appeared in everyone's line of sight in the blink of an eye. Jin Shi's group of 4 retracted their flying swords and shot a grim look at the beastman. As long as Tan Xiu gave the order, they would launch the fiercest attack without hesitation. Grove Bear, who originally had victory in his grasp, suddenly had his pupils violently shrunk. He had a bad premonition the moment Tan Xiu and the others appeared. There was a special kind of human in the mysterious eastern country. They were called cultivators by the Western Dark Forces. Grove Bear instantly determined that these people in front of him were definitely cultivators because their speed was too fast. The weapons they used were like dark magic artifacts or radiant sacred artifacts that could be controlled by special means to kill the enemy. But they didn't offend them. What forces did they belong to? Why did they intervene in this matter? Who are you? Grove Bear was very cautious. He didn't want to provoke other troubles in order to complete his task. Many races were afraid of the power of cultivators, such as the old guy who protected Shangena. Although his strength was very poor, he should also be a cultivator. Wait a minute, Grove Bear's complexion suddenly changed and the bad premonition inside turned more intense. Could it be that they are in cahoots with the old guy who protected Shangena? Tan Xiu ignored Grove Bear and blinked his eyes instead. He looked at Han Jintong, who was protected by Shangena, and felt somewhat regretful inwardly. Had he known earlier that Han Jintong wanted his help to deal with these foreign dark species, he would have directly done him a favor. Take this. Tan Xiu flipped his hand and took out a porcelain bottle and threw it to Shangena. Shangena was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. The arrival of Tan Xiu's group made her happy and worried at the same time. She was happy that these people attacked the beast men as soon as they arrived, but she was worried that she didn't know where these people came from. If they attacked just now because they spoke rudely, she and the professor would still be doomed. "What's this?" asked Shanjena with difficulty. "Give it to that old guy. It can heal his injuries," said Tan Xiu lightly. This, Shanjena hesitated. She didn't know whether she could trust the other party. If the thing in this porcelain bottle was poison, the professor would be poisoned to death. Han Jintong's breathing was very unstable, but the despair in his eyes disappeared without a trace ever since Tan Xiu's group appeared and was replaced by ecstasy. "Shanjena, give it to me." Han Jintong pushed away the wings that protected him and took the porcelain bottle. After opening it, he directly poured the holy healing medicine inside into his mouth. As the sparse true essence flowed in his meridians, the medicine turned into a surging torrent that flowed to his limbs and 5 internal organs in a moment. The special medicinal efficacy continuously healed his injuries. "Thank you, Mr. Tang." Han Jintong was grateful from the bottom of his heart. "Remember my words," said Tan Xiu coldly. "I, Tan Xiu, never ask others to pay the price for saving people. There's no deal to talk about in this regard. I can help you get rid of these foreign alien races, but you must answer a question of mine." Han Jintong finally understood why Tan Xiu didn't even listen to his request and directly refused when he asked for help from Tan Xiu. It turned out that his tone of asking for a deal had made Tan Xiu dissatisfied. Having figured this out, he couldn't find any words to describe his mood other than forcing a wry smile. Chapter 683. Han Jintong's taut heart finally relaxed as he said with an apologetic tone, "Please speak, Mr. Tang. If I'm not mistaken, you and this vampire named Shanjena are together," asked Tan Xiu. "But why are the other races chasing you?" "Shanjena used to be my student. She's very kind and not a treacherous person," said Han Jintong. "I didn't know that she's a bloodkin and only thought that she's a martial arts genius. It wasn't until she was chased and fled to China yesterday that I learned her identity." "So to say, you still insist on saving her even though you know that she's a bloodkin?" Tan Xiu asked thoughtfully. "No matter what her identity is, I must save her as long as she's not a treacherous person," said Han Jintong seriously. "Of course, the most important thing is that she used to be my student." A trace of appreciation flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. He had seen countless alien races when he was in the immortal world, so in his opinion, there was no such thing as race, only good and bad. Han Jintong was a very weak cultivator, yet he could have such an understanding, which was very good. "Then, tell me the reason why she's being chased." Han Jintong opened his mouth, but was interrupted by Grove Bear's rough voice. At this time, Grove Bear's eyes flickered with flames of anger as he glared at Tan Xiu with a murderous look. He didn't expect that he would be ignored, to the extent that he didn't even hear his question. He was an assassin with a strength that countless people feared. Even in the Stygian Club, his status was very honorable. "Damn Easterners. I advise you not to poke your nose into other people's business, else you'll also die." Tan Xiu finally turned his head slowly and indifferently said, "Those who threaten me generally only have 2 outcomes. The first one is to kneel and beg for mercy, and the second one is death. Which one do you want to choose? Do you really want to stand up for them?" Grove Bear roared angrily. "You're right. I'll stand up for them. What can you do to me?" Tan Xiu sneered coldly. Grove Bear shouted in a deep voice, "Kill them." The 2 wingmen flapped their wings and pulled out their dark magic tools one after another as they quickly rushed toward Tan Xiu, whereas the vampires and beastmen pounced on Jin Shi and the others. They were all experienced and ruthless characters who had killed people like flies. The countless battles they had gone through in the past had long since filled them with hostility. "Kill!" A cold voice came out of Tan Xiu's mouth as Jin Shi and the other 9 people instantly attacked. The strongest among them was only at the foundation establishment stage, but they were also battle-hardened powerhouses. Moreover, they also had divine weapons like flying swords. In just a few breaths, they had suppressed the 5 silver-plate assassins. Mo soared into the air and rushed towards Grove Bear with the dagger in his hand. At the same time, he also summoned the flying sword which hovered around his arm, bringing a huge threat to Grove Bear. Tan Xiu didn't move. Instead, he lowered his head again and looked at Han Jintong, saying, "You still haven't told me the reason." Han Jintong retracted his gaze from the killing scene and told everything he learned from Shanjena. In the end, he said with hatred, "I'm not Superman who saves the world, and I'm not God who maintains world peace, but I'm very angry at their inhumane actions, and I hate them very much. Besides, this is related to the safety of my students, so I must stand up." Killing intent flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. He suddenly turned to look at Mo and shouted, "All, get back here." Mo, who was fighting with Grove Bear, heard Tan Xiu's shout. He controlled the flying sword to split Grove Bear back and returned to Tan Xiu in just 2 breaths. At this time, there was a bloody wound on Mo's arm, but the flying sword had torn 2 hideous bloody wounds on Grove Bear's abdomen and back. Tan Xiu looked at Grove Bear and asked in a deep voice, "Are you really affiliated with the Stygian Club?" Grove Bear and Mo had been fighting for a while. But upon hearing Tan Xiu's question, his momentum suddenly rose and he shouted, "You know that we're from the Stygian Club, yet you still dare to provoke us? Aren't you afraid of our revenge?" Tan Xiu didn't answer him with his mouth. He instantly took out his black spear and pounced toward Grove Bear. His speed was several times faster than Mo's and he appeared in front of Grove Bear almost in the blink of an eye. For Tan Xiu, a fearsome guy who had lived in the immortal world for thousands of years, being proficient in all kinds of weapons was really looking down on him. He could even use 18,000 weapons at will. The black spear seemed to have turned into a black dragon that fluttered around his body. Following Tan Xiu's thought fluctuation, the spear pierced Grove Bear's chest in a flash and even his heart was instantly destroyed. World Cage. As the spear's shadow shrouded Grove Bear, Tan Xiu took out more than a dozen pieces of jade at the same time. His fingers crazily carved the array pattern as he shot the jade at each node of the array pattern. In an instant, chaotic force surged out, and a formation was cast down, trapping Grove Bear within the cage of heaven and earth. "All of you, retreat." Tan Xiu no longer glanced at the heavily injured Grove Bear. His figure flickered lightning fast as he kept dashing forward. His spear swept out and directly cut off the wings of the 2 wingmen, while his spear also killed the vampire. As for the 2 beast men, they were hit by his storm-like attacks a few seconds later, causing them to vomit blood and fly upside down. Tan Xiu finally kicked them and smashed them into the heaven and earth cage array. So strong. Han Jintong looked at Tan Xiu in shock. He knew that Tan Xiu possessed a very powerful strength, but he never expected that Tan Xiu's strength would be so terrifying. It must be noted that Han Jintong was now a cultivator. Although he was only at the Qi refining stage, 100 martial arts grandmasters were not his match even if they joined forces. But he couldn't even defeat a silver badge assassin, let alone the stronger gold badge assassin, Grove Bear. However, a terrifying powerhouse like Grove Bear couldn't even withstand a single blow from Tan Xiu. Just how powerful was Tan Xiu's true strength? Shanjena, who was beside him, was dumbfounded as she watched Tan Xiu's figure displaying his invincible might. It was as if she was looking at the vampire clan's strongest expert, Stave Kane. In her imagination, perhaps only Sir Stave Kane, who had reached the prince rank, could compete with Tan Xiu. However, at the same time, intense ecstasy also rose in her heart. The stronger Tan Xiu was, the safer she and the professor would be. Because she could see that this terrifying lord in front of her was an acquaintance of the professor. Praise Satan. Thank you for sending our savior. Shanjena piously made a gesture of the highest courtesy of the vampire clan. Tan Xiu picked up the two winged men with their wings cut off and threw them into the celestial cage as if they were garbage. Tan Xiu didn't have the slightest mercy for these butcher-like characters. Grove Bear clutched his chest, his eyes filled with despair. He had imagined Tan Xiu's strength, but Tan Xiu was too young. It was impossible for a normal human to have such a terrifying strength at such an age. This was the reason why he dared to act. However, he had misjudged Tan Xiu's strength and ended up like this. Else, as an assassin, he would have long fled with his 5 subordinates. Tan Xiu trod on the void and looked at Han Jintong, asking, "How are you going to deal with them if I hand them over to you?" With a hateful expression on his face, Han Jintong resolutely said, "Kill them. Because killing them is equivalent to saving countless people." Tan Xiu nodded and waved his hand. A flame was directly generated and enveloped the entire celestial cage almost in an instant. The intense high temperature roasted the 6 assassins. "Bastard! Just give us a quick death." Grove Bear struggled for a few minutes and finally roared angrily after being forced by the burning heat to the point of suffering. Still ignoring him, Tan Xiu looked at Han Jintong and said, "I think it's too easy for them to kill them. They should suffer endless torture and pain and only be killed when their minds have collapsed." Having said that, he gently waved his arms and the burning flame instantly dissipated without a trace, replaced by a bone-piercing cold current. Furthermore, countless ice needles as thick as silver needles constantly pierced into the celestial cage. The instantaneous alternation of high temperature and bitter cold made Grove Bear and the other 5 seriously injured Silver Plate assassins almost go crazy from the pain. However, they were all vicious people, so they were still able to endure it. Han Jintong stared dumbfoundedly at the scene in front of him, feeling as though he was dreaming. Such a scene that could only be seen in Xianxia movies actually appeared before his eyes at this moment. The visual impact made his heartbeat speed up rapidly. Shocking. An indescribable shock. He had once fantasized that one day he would be able to display all kinds of magical arts and magical powers like an immortal and become a powerful cultivator. Ever since his strength reached the late stage of Qi cultivating stage, he thought that he was already very powerful and that there was probably no one in this world who was more powerful than him. But after knowing Tan Xiu and being hunted for the past 2 days, he finally realized that he was just a frog in a well looking at the sky. His vision was really too narrow. This Tang Xiu in front of him was a real immortal-like figure. If I can learn magical arts and become more powerful, then... An intense desire ignited in Han Jintong's chest. After a long while, a smile finally appeared on Tang Xiu's handsome face as he looked at the 6 assassins, whose faces were full of pain. He said, "I'll give you a chance to live, but you need to tell me something. I'll let you go if you beg for mercy. How about it? Do you want it?" Chapter 684. Grove Bear didn't die. Although his heart had been blown up, his life crystal nucleus was still intact and he was still standing strong. However, the dark energy in his life crystal nucleus was being consumed very fast. Once the dark energy was exhausted, it would be his death. He was desperate and regretful. In order to get the mission to hunt down Shanjena, he had to use some connections to get in touch with a big shot in the Stygian Club. Of course, the reward for completing the mission was also very generous. But now, the taste of waiting for death made him regret it endlessly. Before coming to China, he had heard from that big shot in the Stygian Club that there were people with terrifying strength in the distant and mysterious eastern ancient country. But he didn't think so and didn't care about it at all. Now, he really realized that what that big shot said made sense. "What do you want to know?" Grove Bear didn't use a roar this time, but a question in a weakened state. "You should have a very high status in the Stygian Club given your identity," said Tan Xiu slowly. "I need you to tell me the intel about the Stygian Club. If the information you give me matches the information I've sent people to investigate, I can spare your lives. If it doesn't match the information I've sent people to investigate, or if it's worse than the information I've sent people to investigate, I'll immediately treat you and use special methods to imprison you. Then, I'll torture you day and night, making you beg for death. I'll tell you. Please spare our lives, sir. The first to beg for mercy was not Grove Bear, but the werewolf with the bloodline of the werewolf clan. He was very miserable at this time. The pain of his body being tortured had pushed him to the limit, even though he didn't have a particularly strong willpower. Grove Bear's contemptuous eyes swept over the werewolf beast man, but he immediately hid it and said, I promise you. Tan Xiu clapped his hands and smilingly said, that's right. A wise man submits to circumstances. Since you cherish this opportunity, then I'll have a few more people to prove whether what you said is true or false. After saying that, Tan Xiu's feet landed on the lakeside and he immediately took out some jades to arrange a feng shui array. After arranging a combination of 6 confinement and soundproof arrays, he immediately removed the world cage and threw the 6 assassins inside. You are imprisoned here by me. It is impossible for you to escape. In addition, I have also set up a soundproof array. No matter what you say inside, no one outside will be able to hear it. The questions I send will be exactly the same. If your answers are different, you will die miserably. But if anyone can reveal some confidential information that my people haven't asked about, not only will I not kill you, but I will also give you some benefits. You can leave the Stygian Club after getting the benefits. Tan Xiu stood in the middle of the 6 arrays and said aloud with a smile. Grove Bear didn't trust Tan Xiu. He tried to call his companion's name a few times, but he didn't get any answer at all. Under such circumstances, he had no choice but to think clearly. If he were to fabricate something, he would definitely be discovered. At the peak of Mount Lao, Ji Mu was lying on his stomach between the rocks, observing the valley a few kilometers below with a pair of binoculars. He dared to swear that he had never thought that he could have such a chance encounter in his life. He never thought that there would be such legendary immortals and monsters in this world. What was most unbelievable to him was that he actually saw an acquaintance among the group of assassins. It was someone he once dreaded. Tan Xiu. Brother Mu. You've been holding the binoculars for nearly 2 hours. Shouldn't you let me have a look? Beside Ji Mu, a thin young man dressed in strange clothes snorted in a bored manner. He hadn't seen the scene below from the beginning to the end, so he felt very strange when Ji Mu used the binoculars to observe the dark valley. Did you forget what I told you? Ji Mu said in a low voice. You can't speak without my permission. This binoculars with night vision function are too precious. It will be troublesome if you break them. Just stay here and we'll leave soon. The thin youth rolled his eyes and muttered a few words in a low voice. Then, he resentfully turned over and directly looked up at the dark sky, silently thinking about something. When the sky turned bright, Ji Mu's expression suddenly changed. He reached out to wake up the sleeping thin youth and said in a low voice, let's leave this place quickly. We'll go to the racetrack and leave. Remember, you didn't accompany me here tonight. I slept at home. The thin youth was puzzled and asked, what's wrong with you, Brother Mu? Are you bewitched or something? We obviously. Promise me. I'll give you that bumblebee sports car, said Ji Mu with a straight face. The thin youth's expression changed and he subconsciously looked at the valley, but he still didn't see anything. He immediately nodded and said, I also slept at home tonight. I didn't even step out of my room. Brother Mu, we must keep our words. I'll keep my word. Ji Mu crawled back a few meters before he got up from the ground and quickly disappeared on the other side of the mountain with the thin youth. At the lake in the valley. A satisfied smile appeared on Tan Xiu's handsome face as he looked at the stack of information he had inquired about. He had figured out a lot about the Stygian Club after asking questions in the middle of the night. The most important information was that the Stygian Club wasn't purely composed of humans. The one with the most power was the Beastman Fox clan, Angus. He was also known as the #1 powerhouse in the Stygian Club. The Stygian Club also had a complex network of intertwined forces. There were a total of 8 powerful figures under Angus, who controlled many forces and families. Those forces and families were also divided into ranks. Additionally, aside from the dark forces, he also learned about another situation, the Radiant Castle in Europe. It was a very powerful force that specialized in eliminating the dark creatures. It even controlled the second most powerful organization in the world, the Crusader Consortium. Let us go. Grove Bear bellowed from within a formation. Tan Xiu nodded to Moo. After he broke all 6 arrays, Moo and the other 5 men moved lightning fast and directly killed the 6 assassins. At the side, Shanjena was tongue-tied and dumbfounded as she watched the scene of Han Jintong's group of 6 killing the assassins. After Tan Xiu put all 6 corpses into his interspatial ring, she seemed to have woken up from a dream. With a frightened face, she leaned toward Han Jintong and asked in a trembling voice, "Professor, didn't he say that he would release Grove Bear and the others? Why did he go back on his words and kill them?" Tan Xiu had a keen hearing. He didn't wait for Han Jintong to answer her and turned his head with a faint smile. "I made it very clear that I'll give them a chance and won't kill them. But I didn't promise that my men won't kill them. Don't tell me you can also feel pity for these vicious bastards." No. Shanjena hurriedly shook her head and said, "I have no pity for them at all. I can't wait to kill them myself. Thank you for saving us, Mr. Tang. I'll definitely tell my brother in Salzburg about what happened today. I think he will thank you." "Then tell me how your brother will thank me?" asked Tan Xiu with great interest. "Will he move his lips? Or will he give me some gifts?" This, Shanjena was left speechless. Tan Xiu shook his head. His eyes then fell on Han Jintong and lightly said, "I've repaid the favor I owe you. We don't owe each other anything from now on. Mr. Tang, your life-saving grace is greater than the heavens." Han Jintong shook his head. "I, Han Jintong, will always remember this kindness in my heart. If you need me in the future, please don't hesitate to ask." Tan Xiu couldn't help but smile and said, "It's not suitable for her to stay in the country. If you want to avoid some unnecessary troubles, you'd better find a way to send her away as soon as possible. Perhaps it won't be long before some people from some special departments of the country will rush to Demonic City." Han Jintong was shaken inwardly and immediately replied with gratitude, "I'll do my best." Tan Xiu didn't say anything more and quickly left with Moo and the others. He had achieved his goal tonight, so he was eager to go back and study the corpses of the beast men, vampires, and wingmen. Back in the immortal world, there were many devil cultivators who used the corpses of various living races to make medicine. They even used living bodies. Tan Xiu was not a devil cultivator, even though he practiced the top-notch heavenly art of cosmic genesis cultivation technique in the demon realm. The difference between immortal cultivation and devil cultivation was, in fact, not the difference in cultivation technique, but the difference in character and behavior. Even a devil cultivator would not be hated by others as long as he had good intentions. But if an immortal cultivator had evil intentions, he would be hated and hated by others. Good and evil. Immortal and devil. Even though Tan Xiu cultivated a demon god's body, he still had good intentions in his heart. In the valley. Han Jintong looked at Tan Xiu's back as he left and muttered to himself, "I knew his strength was extraordinary, but I didn't expect him to be this powerful. It feels good to be able to survive." Shanjena, who stood beside Han Jintong, retracted her gaze and curiously asked, "Professor, who are they? I know you're very powerful, but I didn't expect that there would be someone more powerful than you. We divergent races don't count because we're born with strength far beyond humans." Han Jintong came back to his senses and forced a smile. "Don't ask about his identity. It'll only bring you harm and no benefits. Shanjena, the most important thing now is to help you return to Salzburg and return to your brother. Otherwise, no one will be able to help us if other assassins from the Stygian Club come. Shangena quickly said, Professor, you know those people. Can you talk to them and ask them to escort me back? I'm willing to hire them. Han Jintong forced a smile and said, Do you think you can hire such powerhouses with money? Chapter 685. Shangena thought about it in silence and finally nodded in agreement with Han Jintong's words. That Tan Xiu was obviously a high and mighty big shot. How could such a powerful character like him accept others' employment just because of some money? However, the moment Shangena thought about it, she became happy again. At the very least, it felt good to have a new lease of life after a disaster. After taking a deep breath, she looked at Han Jintong and smilingly said, Thank you very much, Professor. If it wasn't for your protection, I'm afraid I would have turned into a pool of stinking blood by now. Han Jintong was thinking about how to get a higher-level cultivation technique and how to become a real powerhouse like Tan Xiu. Therefore, he didn't care much about Shangena's words. He said perfunctorily, There's no need to be so polite between us, and then prepared to leave with Shangena. Huh? Shangena suddenly looked curiously at the depths of the mountain forest because she saw a burly man who had just left with Tan Xiu return. Han Jintong was affected by her exclamation and followed her line of sight. He saw Jin Shi rushing over from the distance and stood in front of them in just a few breaths. He immediately cupped his fists and said, Is there anything else you need, brother? My boss asked me to ask you if you're interested in visiting him, said Jin Shi. If you are, you need to agree to two of my boss's requests. Han Jintong had always dreamed of having a relationship with Tan Xiu, so he immediately replied without hesitation, What are the two requests? First, you must obey my boss's instructions and can't leave without permission for the time being, said Jin Shi. Second, she needs to cooperate with my boss to do some experiments. Shangena raised her bloody finger and pointed at her nose, asking in surprise, I need to cooperate with your boss to do some experiments? What kind of experiments? I don't know. Jin Shi shook his head. Han Jintong slightly furrowed his brows. He looked at Shangena and then at the direction where Tan Xiu left and suddenly asked, I want to know whether the experiments Tan Xiu wants to do will hurt Shangena or not. I don't know. Jin Shi still shook his head. He paused and thought for a while before saying, If my boss wants to hurt her, I'm afraid he would have already done it. I don't think you have the ability to resist. Han Jintong instantly relaxed as he looked at Shangena and asked, Shangena, you can choose to refuse now. I'll find a way to send you out of China. You can also choose to stay, but you need to cooperate with Mr. Tang to do some experiments. I believe he won't hurt you given his character. Is Mr. Tang's place safe? Asked Shangena cautiously. It should be much safer than you leaving alone, said Han Jintong. You have the scent of the dark soul fragrance on you. If the Stygian Club's assassins continue to hunt you down, I'm afraid you won't have much chance to escape. If you choose to stay, you can wait at Mr. Tang's place until the smell of the hidden soul incense completely dissipates, and then you can quietly leave. Shangena was delighted inwardly and immediately nodded excitedly. Then I choose to stay. As long as Mr. Tang doesn't hurt me, I'm willing to cooperate with him in his experiments. Laoshan Highway. 5 off-road vehicles were parked by the roadside. Tan Xiu sat in the car in the middle and smoked. Looking at the two respectful young men outside the window, Tan Xiu said with satisfaction, You guys did a good job this time. What's your name? Wang Ye. Chen Song. Both of them answered separately. Work hard in the future and strive to sit in the top 2 positions in Shanghai's intelligence organization as soon as possible. Tan Xiu nodded. I'm looking forward to serving by my side in the future. Chen Song and Wang Ye's eyes lit up and they immediately nodded excitedly. Tan Xiu took out 2 porcelain bottles from his interspatial ring, each containing a drop of body-refining liquid. He threw them to the two and said, Fill the bathtub with warm water after you go back and soak yourself in it. Do remember to persist for half an hour no matter how painful it is. It's good for you. Thank you, boss. The two men held the porcelain bottles as though they were treasures with eyes full of passion. As the two men left, Tan Xiu finished smoking his cigarette and then saw Jin Shi coming with Han Jintong and Shanjena. He didn't greet them and let them enter a car and then ordered them to drive. As a matter of fact, he suddenly changed his mind and prepared to take Han Jintong and Shanjena back because he recalled something. The blood activity of a vampire's corpse would definitely weaken and eventually lose its activity. But Shanjena was different. She was a living vampire. If he could study her blood or other organs in her body, he might be able to gain something. On the way out, he called Moe and told him to put down the research project at hand and immediately rushed to Shanghai alone. Moe was a biologist. He knew it the first time he met him, so he could give him the task of studying vampires. As for the final result, he faintly looked forward to it. At Paradise Manor, Tan Xiu didn't directly return to Blue Star Villa Complex but directly brought Han Jintong and Shanjena here. It was more convenient to settle them down. Ouyang Lulu had received a call from Tan Xiu in advance. She was already in the deepest part of Paradise Manor, a courtyard that was not open to the public. There were several Western-style buildings there. When everyone arrived, they directly settled Han Jintong and Shanjena here. In the living room, Han Jintong had just sat down when he saw Tan Xiu staring at Shanjena. With his extraordinary wisdom, he immediately got up and said, "I'm injured, Mr. Tang, so I'm going to recuperate in my room first. Just call me if you have any instructions." Tan Xiu didn't even look at him. He waved his hand and motioned him to do as he pleased. His eyes were still full of curiosity, making Shanjena feel a bit scared. "Tang. Mr. Tang, if there's nothing else, I'm going to recuperate," Shanjena immediately got up and said. But Tan Xiu stopped her. Even though Shanjena was covered with scars, he seemed to be looking at a beautiful object. Only after Han Jintong's back disappeared in the corridor did he turn his hand to take out a holy healing pill and threw it to Shanjena, saying, "I'm very curious. This pill has a strong healing effect on humans, but does it have any effect on you? Do you dare to try it?" Shanjena looked at the pill in her hand and smelled the fragrance of the medicine. An intoxicated expression appeared on her pale face. After greedily inhaling a few breaths, she looked at Tan Xiu and asked, "You mean, you want me to take this pill?" "That's right." Tan Xiu replied with a smile. Shanjena threw the holy healing pill into her mouth without hesitation. She immediately felt the pill turn into a warm current that drilled into her body through her throat. The moment the warm current entered her body, it turned into countless warm currents that spread all over her body in just a few breaths. Warm. Comfortable. It was as if every pore on her body was stretched out, and her internal injuries were constantly being healed. In fact, a portion of the medicinal energy actually entered her bloodline and merged into her core. The hideous bloody wounds on her body surface healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Her tall and delicate body kept twisting and finally slumped on the soft sofa, constantly squirming. Itchy and comfortable. The two opposite sensations made her feel as if she was floating in the clouds. She greedily enjoyed these two sensations, wishing that she could sink into it forever and never wake up again. Crack. The bones inside Shanjena's body emitted popping sounds. The pair of tattered wings that she had retracted into her body also spread out in an instant. Her delicate body slowly floated up from the sofa as a special energy flow continuously surged from all directions and integrated into her body. Her wings were quickly repaired. Her aura was getting more and more powerful. Pop, the sound of a bottle cork being unplugged came out from Shanjena's body in an extremely faint manner. Her body swelled a lot in an instant, and her wings enlarged a bit. The patterns on her wings also became a lot more complicated than before. At this moment, Shanjena's closed eyes suddenly opened and a scarlet bloody light flashed away. A look of ecstasy appeared on her pale face as she clenched her fists and fiercely waved her arms. Amid the whistling sound of the wind, her figure instantly fell in front of Tan Xiu, prostrating on the ground and gratefully saying, "Thank you, Mr. Tang." Tan Xiu had been observing Shangena and found that her aura was several times stronger than before. He looked at her grateful expression and curiously asked, "What happened to your body? Have your injuries healed?" Shangena prostrated on the ground and raised her head as she excitedly said, "We bloodkin have a strict hierarchy of bloodlines. I was just a small baron before, but after taking the pill you gave me, my injuries were healed. Most importantly, my bloodline underwent a qualitative change and I broke through to the Viscount rank. Now, I'm confident that I can smash that Wolf Clan beastman's head if I encounter him again." Tang Xiu looked at Shangena with a strange expression and said, "In other words, the medicinal pill I gave you to heal your injuries turned out to be like a medicinal pill that can increase your cultivation level, improving your strength and upgrading your bloodline level?" "That's right." "Yes, that's the case." Shangena nodded repeatedly. "Are there any adverse reactions?" asked Tan Xiu. "No adverse reactions." Shangena shook her head in a daze. "I'm in good health now. I won't feel weak even if I don't take blood for 3 days." Tan Xiu suddenly recalled something and asked, "Do you bloodkin rely on blood to survive?" "You're right," said Shangena. "Our food is blood, and it also provides us with energy. We bloodkin must take blood to survive for a long time. If we come across high-quality blood, it can also make our bloodline undergo a qualitative change and improve its rank." Even in the immortal world, Tan Xiu had never encountered such a situation with the bloodkin. He immediately asked curiously, "What kind of blood can be considered as high quality?" Chapter 686. Shangena seemed to have recalled something. She subconsciously licked her lips and said, "For example, the otherworldly races with a higher level than me. Also, there are special humans among you humans, like Professor. His blood quality is very high. When I was sparring with him, I injured him and secretly tasted a few drops of his blood." Tan Xiu suddenly understood as though he found a fun toy. He got up and circled around Shangena a few times. Then, he stopped in front of her, stroked his chin and asked, "What's the special difference between you vampires and humans?" Shangena thought for a while and said, "We vampires are born with a stronger physique than humans. Our strength and speed are also better. We have wings, but humans don't have them. We mainly rely on our wings to absorb energy." "That's right, we vampires have a core, but humans don't. Stand up, I'll check your pulse." Tan Xiu waved his hand. "Check my pulse?" Shangena stood up in a daze. She stood in front of Tan Xiu and was at a loss. She didn't understand what Tan Xiu meant. Tan Xiu looked at Shangena's expression and immediately understood what she was thinking. He let out a hollow laugh to cover up the awkwardness and said, "You don't need to do anything. Just stretch out your wrist. Remember, if my power enters your body, don't resist. I won't hurt you. Understood?" At this time, Shangena completely let down her vigilance toward Tan Xiu. After all, Tan Xiu saved her life and even gave her a very powerful pill that improved her bloodline by a level and made her strength several times stronger than before. Tan Xiu pressed Shangena's wrist. To his surprise, Shangena had very few meridians in her body. There were only 108 meridians and 108 acupoints in her body. These 108 meridians ran through her limbs and 5 bones and connected to her 2 pairs of wings, forming a very perfect circulation. However, there were only 6 meridians in Shangena's body at this time. These 6 meridians were connected to her limbs and wings. Tan Xiu's perception moved toward Shangena's heart. Shangena knew that Tan Xiu wouldn't hurt her, but she still subconsciously blocked it. The core inside the heart was the most mysterious and important existence of vampires. If someone destroyed the core of a vampire, they would be directly killed. Tang Xiu's probing didn't stop. Even though it was blocked for a moment, Shanjena instantly withdrew her blocking consciousness and smoothly wrapped her heart and slowly integrated it into it. The diamond-shaped core was like a blood-colored crystal. It was very small and was only the size of a fingernail. But Tan Xiu's perception alone could sense that this core contained a huge amount of energy. Despite his current body's strength, he would be injured if this core self-detonated. This core is a very magical species. Indeed. Tan Xiu secretly sighed in his heart. At the same time, he was also shocked by the Creator's miraculous power. He was getting more and more curious about what kind of existence Earth was in the universe. There were many rare treasures in the immortal world, as well as species that had never been seen in the immortal world. Tan Xiu, I've arranged the meal. The waiter will bring it to you later. Ouyang Lulu walked in from the outside with brisk steps. But when she saw Shanjena with her wings spread out, her words were stuck in her throat. Despite her tough mind, she would have been too frightened and screamed if it wasn't for the daytime. Ghost. Tan Xiu retracted his perception and turned to glance at Ouyang Lulu. He suddenly felt a faint headache. His consciousness was focused on observing the core inside Shanjena's heart, so he didn't notice Ouyang Lulu's arrival. Now that she saw Shanjena's appearance, it would be a headache for him to explain it. On the contrary, Shanjena didn't show any strange expression after being seen by Ouyang Lulu. She flapped her wings and came before Ouyang Lulu. Then, she stretched out her hand in a friendly manner and smilingly said, "Hello, beautiful Miss Dongfang. I'm Shanjena from the Salzburg Bloodkin." Ouyang Lulu gulped down her saliva and stared at Shanjena with her big eyes for a while before she cautiously stretched out her hand. She shook her hand with the first half of her fingers and said with a trembling voice, "Hello, I'm Ouyang Lulu from Jingmen Island." "No need to be afraid, Miss Lulu." Shanjena smiled and said, "I may belong to the dark camp, but I'm not a bad bloodkin. Mr. Tang saved my life and helped me improve my strength, so I'm very grateful to him." "You have his aura on you. That means you're his woman and also my benefactor." "Bloodkin. Help. My benefactor." Ouyang Lulu's heart thumped fast. She squeezed out a smile and nodded. Then, she immediately ran to Tan Xiu with a slightly flustered expression. She sat next to Tan Xiu and grabbed Tan Xiu's arm, saying, "What the hell is going on here? How can there be bloodsuckers in this world? No, how can there be bloodkin? There are all sorts of strange things in the boundless world," said Tan Xiu. "Since there are humans, beasts, and birds, why can't there be bloodkin? However, be it cultivators or bloodkin, they are all hidden forces that are rarely discovered by ordinary people. Even if they are discovered, they will use all kinds of means to make the other party keep it a secret and even kill those ordinary people." "Shit, you've discovered the secret of Shanjena being a bloodkin. Do you think she'll kill you?" I. Ouyang Lulu's pupils shrunk and she instantly approached Tan Xiu with a fearful expression. However, the fearful expression only lasted for a few seconds before she immediately reacted. She angrily hit Tan Xiu's arm and snappily said, "She didn't kill you, so how could she kill me? Besides, you're her benefactor, and I'm also half her benefactor." "How could she kill me? You're such a scoundrel. You're just trying to scare me." Tan Xiu burst into laughter. He rarely saw Ouyang Lulu with a fearful expression. Her expression just now was very amusing. Hugging her shoulder, Tan Xiu smilingly said, "Lulu, I believe you already know that I'm a cultivator. Shanjena is a bloodkin secret, and I hope you won't spread it out. After all, the existence of the bloodkin is deeply feared and feared by humans. I don't want to bring trouble to you and Shanjena. Don't worry. I know." Ouyang Lulu nodded obediently this time. Tan Xiu then looked at Shanjena and said, "All right, put away your wings." Since you're going to live here for some time, I'll send someone to the hospital to find fresh blood to ensure your daily consumption. But you're not allowed to leave this building without my order. Shanjena hesitated and said, Mr. Tang, can I go to the rooftop? Because we, the blood kin, not only devour blood, but also absorb moonlight energy under the moonlight. It's also beneficial to our cultivation. Absorb moonlight? Tang Xiu suddenly recalled the veined patterns he observed on Shanjena's wings. He immediately closed his eyes as the routes of those veined patterns appeared in his mind. The more he recalled, the more shocked he looked. Finally, he even opened his eyes. and made Shanjena spread her wings again to carefully observe. Wonderful. Very wonderful. Tan Xiu exclaimed in admiration while studying it. His eyes became extremely bright. Colorful lights flickered in his eyes, faintly revealing the light of excitement. Half an hour later, Tan Xiu asked Ouyang Lulu to find a pen and paper as he quickly drew some patterns on it. In just a few minutes, he had drawn a complete pattern. As the primal chaos force in his body fused into the pattern, a faint suction force came out from it. A trace of extremely weak moonlight power that even cultivators with low cultivation couldn't sense was sucked into the pattern on the paper. It was daytime. The moonlight power was extremely thin. Having figured it out, Tang Xiu immediately clapped his hands and said with a happy expression, "That's great. That's really great. I didn't expect that I would be able to obtain such a great opportunity." That's right. This was indeed a great opportunity. He cultivated the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, and the main energy he absorbed was the power of the stars. The moon was also a kind of star, so it naturally needed to absorb the moonlight power. If he were to arrange this pattern to form an array during his cultivation, he would definitely be able to speed up the absorption and even increase his cultivation speed several times. In the evening, Moe rushed to the Paradise Manor, but his appearance was a bit disheveled and his grizzled hair was in a mess. Hence, he was stopped by the Paradise Manor's security guards. "Get out of the way. I'm looking for someone." Moe was anxious to see Tan Xiu, but he was also curious as to why Tan Xiu asked him to rush here alone. Hence, his tone was particularly stiff. One of the security guards handed him a towel and curiously asked, "Who are you looking for? If you tell me, I might be able to help you contact him." Moe wiped the dust on his body with the towel. The dust was dirted in the laboratory because he was in a hurry to rush here. A lot of the dust had yet to be wiped clean, and even his grizzled hair was gray, making him look like an old migrant worker. "I'm looking for Tan Xiu. That's right. He told me that she will take me to see him as long as I say Ouyang Lulu's name." Several security guards were moved. One of them immediately took out a walkie-talkie and passed the news. Not long after, a sightseeing car drove over. Ouyang Lulu, who was wearing a mink coat, curiously looked at Moe and asked, "Are you Professor Mo?" Moe didn't expect that such a beautiful girl would come out to pick him up. After nodding, he asked, "Where's Tan Xiu? I need to see him immediately." A smile outlined on the corner of Ouyang Lulu's mouth as she said, "He's playing with a new toy. You can see him if you come with me, Professor Mo." "That's right, there may be a surprise for you later." As requested by the Grand Union, today's 3 p.m. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.